Chapter 388. In the darkness of the night, the butcher looked like a black crocodile lurking in the silent plains. But the command center was brightly lit. The white-haired old man and the butcher were not resting. Their faces were not looking good because the young man was sitting on the floor, smiling foolishly. He looked as if he had seen the most delicious food in the world, saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. The white-haired old man frowned. Yang Wei and Song Kong couldn't cure him. The butcher's face was grim. Their answers were the same. They couldn't cure him. The white-haired old man sighed. What about the medical bay? The butcher sighed even harder. We checked it several times, but we couldn't find anything. The white-haired old man said, Let's bring him back first. There's always better medical equipment there. The butcher said, It must be that Fujin Masa's doing. The white-haired old man frowned again. What do you mean? The butcher lit a cigar and took a puff before saying, Before we disembarked, there were a total of 23 people who were intact. I had them all killed. Little Feng was in charge of that Fujin Masa, but when we disembarked, only Fujin Masa was fine. The others were all crippled. After we sent them off, we found Little Feng in this state. The white-haired old man's frown deepened. Every time I ask you to accept people, I remind you that you must check their origins. Previously, the origin of the ship was unknown, but you insisted on bringing people up. Now it's like this. The butcher sneered. It's fine. If that Fujin Masa really did it, I'll make him regret ever being born. Looks like your greed isn't ordinary. A faint voice sounded behind them. Normal people would be crippled by you guys before being sold to Health Town. The white-haired old man and the butcher were shocked. There was someone behind them that they couldn't sense. What the hell was going on? When they turned around, they found that Ding Ming had sneaked onto the starship like a ghost. He was sitting on a chair in the resting area, casually picking up a blue pine cone and putting it in his mouth. He was chewing it with relish. The taste isn't bad. Looks like you guys know how to enjoy yourself. Ding Ming smacked his lips. It had been a long time since he last tasted food. To be precise, it had been many years since he last tasted food. Butcher quietly reached for his waist, but Ding Ming suddenly said, Don't bother. When I came up, your brothers were sleeping. It was very likely that the patrolling personnel were not sleeping, but being slept. Otherwise, how could the starship's internal detection system not have any activity at all? The white-haired old man suddenly smiled. I didn't expect Brother Feng to be such an expert. Forgive me for my lack of respect. I accept the gift. If I have offended you in any way, I hope Brother Feng will forgive me. Ding Ming also laughed. You smashed my ship, stole my things, and even crippled my hands and feet. How can I forgive you? Do you want me to laugh it off? Chun-Li couldn't help but laugh. Misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. Butcher also reacted at this moment. He quickly smiled and said, It's indeed a misunderstanding. This little Feng was immature and offended you. Look, isn't he being punished by us now? Are you satisfied with this result, brother? He had no choice but to be polite to Ding Ming. Other things aside, the fact that he could silently appear behind you without you noticing was enough to explain many things. It sounds like you guys are quite self-aware. As he said this, Ding Ming's eyes glanced at Little Feng, who was sitting on the ground. Little Feng immediately came to his senses. After looking around, he jumped up as if he had been shot by an arrow. He pointed at Ding Ming and shouted in horror, Witchcraft! Boss, he knows witchcraft. There's something fishy about this guy. There's something fishy about him. Chun-Li's and Butcher's hearts sank. They couldn't tell what Ding Ming had just done. She could turn people into idiots or sober them up just like that. It seemed like they had hit a wall this time. Chun-Li smiled again. Brother Feng, you've come in the middle of the night. Is there something urgent? No, there's nothing urgent. Ding Ming answered slowly. Let me ask you, how many times have you come to Madison to sell disabled people? Chun-Li smiled. To be honest, we've only been here for the past 2 years. We didn't do this business before. Ding Ming glanced at him. I asked you how many times, not when. At this moment, Butcher suddenly raised his hand, and the energy pistol in his hand spat out a ball of light. The ball of light flew halfway, and with a whoosh, it turned into a large energy net that covered Ding Ming. At the same time, Ying Chungli's figure flashed rapidly, leaving behind a phantom that floated towards Ding Ming. To be honest, these were all insignificant tricks. However, the two of them had been partners for many years and paid great attention to timing and coordination. Butcher did not expect this thing to be able to trap Ding Ming after casting out the energy net. However, as long as Ding Ming was held back by Ying Chungli, then they would have a chance. Swoosh! To Butcher's surprise, the energy net wrapped around Ding Ming, and Ying Chungli's fist seemed to have hit Ding Ming's chin. But the problem was that the energy net was tied too deeply and disappeared in an instant. It was as if it had been tied into Ding Ming's body. Ying Chungli's fist had clearly hit Ding Ming, but Ding Ming was completely fine. He sat there perfectly still. Upon closer inspection, Ying Chungli's fist seemed to be a few centimeters away from Ding Ming's chin. He could neither hit it nor pull it back. Looking at his flushed face, he had probably used up all his strength. Ding Ming looked at Ying Chungli coldly. I asked you how many times, and you wanted to hit me. Let me ask you again. How many times have you come to Madison to sell disabled people? Sweat trickled down Ying Chungli's forehead. He was not in pain, but in panic because he found that he could not use any of his psionic power. He was completely suppressed by Ding Ming's psionic power and had no chance to struggle at all. No, not many, Ying Chungli replied in a trembling voice. Only 20 or so times. Ding Ming immediately became expressionless. You sold thousands of people each time. 20 or so times means you sold tens of thousands of people. And you want to cripple normal people. You really know how to do business. Ying Chungli's face turned pale. Brother Feng, you're a big shot. Please forgive us. We're just trying to make a living. Ding Ming snorted coldly. Don't worry. I won't kill you. Ying Chungli seemed to be relieved. But Ding Ming said again, I just want you to understand one thing. If you become disabled, I'd like to see if Professor Zhang will install a prosthetic limb for you. After saying that, he twisted his hand, and Ying Chungli immediately let out an extremely painful howl. His right hand was broken at the elbow, and then the broken hand turned red. It was so red that it shone brightly, and in the end, it melted like molten steel. Ding Ming's current strength had far surpassed what it used to be. His thermodynamic origin energy could easily reach a temperature of tens of thousands of degrees. Not to mention an arm, even an alloy door would be melted. Ying Chungli could no longer howl because he had fainted on the ground. With a clatter, the cigar in the butcher's hand fell onto the steel plate. He had never seen something like this before. He could not even imagine it. The strength of his opponent's psionic power meant that he was probably a martial artist from the deity battlefield. At this moment, he turned and ran without another word. The young man's speed was not slower than his. He turned around and reached the entrance of the main passageway. However, the two of them were confident that their speed was top-notch. But as they ran, they did not know what happened. They realized that they were running in midair. Their legs kept running, but their bodies did not move at all. Ding Ming, who was sitting on the sofa, looked at the two of them coldly. He opened his left hand and slowly pulled back. The butcher and the young man were immediately pulled back by an invisible force. Ding Ming pulled back his hand, and the two of them fell to the ground with a thud. Big brother, no. Master Feng, I was wrong. The butcher immediately knelt down. He was really scared out of his wits by Ding Ming's godlike methods. Ding Ming looked at him and said coldly, Cut off your hand, and I'll spare your life. If you want me to do it myself, it won't be as simple as cutting off your hand. This butcher and the young man were instantly dumbfounded. This was even more unbearable than if they had been directly killed. Ding Ming snorted in disdain. You guys sure have guts when you crippled other people's hands and feet. Now you're afraid of crippling yourselves? Look at you guys. Do you still deserve to be called space pirates? Ding Ming did not have a good impression of space pirates. No matter which star they were in, pirates were hated by almost everyone. Moreover, this group of people was involved in human trafficking. It was impossible for him to show them mercy. Therefore, in Butcher's field of vision, he saw a bright white light rise up. He only felt a chill in his heart, but the real chill came from the saber. Before the saber arrived, The severe chill pierced his eyes like sharp needles. When he closed his eyes just now, he didn't even feel a trace of pain before he fell down. The young man could not see Ding Meng's attack clearly. The blade flashed again, and the young man felt a chill in his face. He no longer felt pain or fear. He collapsed as well. He did not know how to use the painless blade technique, but Ding Meng did. After the three people in the command room were dealt with, Makoto Fuma and Shueyu Mountain slowly walked out of the main passage. Makoto Fuma's tone was filled with envy. In the past few years, you've not only improved, you've also improved by leaps and bounds. Shueyu Mountain said, "What do we do next? Launch the starship?" Ding Meng stood up. "No, it's too risky for this transport ship to go out alone. Throw the dozens of pirates outside out and let them fend for themselves. Drive the starship to a hidden location and hide." Makoto Fuma hesitated. "If you let these people go, what if they call for backup?" Ding Meng said, "I can't wait for them to call for backup. I was just worried that there wouldn't be any attack starships coming." Makoto Fuma and Shueyu immediately understood what he meant. Whether these pirates called for help from Yangwei or sent a distress signal to space, as long as they could summon more people or flying vehicles, it would be beneficial for them. With Ding Meng's current strength, as long as the prototype could be repaired, even if Chu Mingliang was reborn, he would still die. Makoto Fuma volunteered. "We won't go back to Health Town with you. We'll stay and study the starship's database to see if we can find anything useful. At the same time, we'll see if there's any way to repair your second set of armor. We'll contact the wristwatch when the time comes." Ding Meng nodded. "I just checked. This ship doesn't have any decent weapon systems. You two be careful." Chapter 389. The next morning, Ding Meng showed up at Zheng Kang's research facility on time. The research facility was still the same. Most of the people who came in and out were prosthetics. Myling was buried in her work, and Zheng Kang seemed to be forever polishing those bones. The only difference was that Hongda and the others were here again, and they were all equipped with new armor. Actually, it wasn't accurate to describe them as armor. They should be called battle suits. These battle suits were obviously made of bone material. They were like a set of light yellow tights that covered the wearer's body, leaving only the eyes, nose, mouth, and ears exposed. They definitely didn't look as majestic and mighty as battle suits. Instead, they looked more like mummies. Ding Meng couldn't help but smile. Xiao AI said, "I'm analyzing the composition of this suit. It's very flexible and doesn't fear sharp metal weapons. It's also resistant to heat and cold. According to my calculations, it seems to be able to resist a variety of poisons. It's indeed a good piece of equipment for origin ability users with prosthetics." However, Hongda didn't miss the expression on Ding Meng's face. He was a little annoyed. "Do you think we're funny?" Ding Meng ignored him. He couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this group of people. To him, Hongda and the others weren't worthy of his attention. "Kid, Brother Hong is asking you a question. Are you deaf?" Someone beside him was unhappy. Ding Meng said, "Do you have many of these bone armors? Can you give me one?" When they heard his question, everyone burst into laughter. Even Hongda couldn't help but laugh. "Kid, your combat strength isn't that great, and there's something wrong with your brain. Only the strongest people in Health Town deserve to have these things." "Haha, do you think you deserve it?" Ding Meng's eyelids drooped, and he didn't answer. At this time, a clear and cold voice came from a gate. "Why would a real expert need bone armor? Only the weak are equipped with battle suits. The strong don't need them at all." Another dozen or so men and women rushed in. This group of people was different from Hongda's group. They were dressed very simply. It felt like they were wearing simple leather clothes. Only the elbows, shoulders, knees, and wrists were made of metal. Moreover, each of them carried a cold weapon on their back. Looking at the shape of the scabbard, it should be a long saber, a cavalry saber, a short sword, or a scimitar. To be able to use these things, their martial skills should not be bad. The leader of the group was a young girl. She wasn't tall, her hair was short, and her facial features weren't very delicate. However, when put together, she gave off a valiant and resolute feeling. This was especially true for her tall nose bridge and thick eyebrows, which made her look very lively. In terms of appearance, this young girl would be a natural beauty even in the Holy Grail Federation. However, the young girl's skin was dark and rough. Her arms were muscular, and blue veins could be seen with the naked eye. After all, she was a person from this place, so it was impossible for her to have any high-end cosmetics. If this young girl really had such conditions, then she wouldn't be worse than Dai, Yi, and Aaron. Even so, many people on Hong Da's side were secretly looking at the young girl's towering chest. Ding Meng's focus was definitely not on these. From the moment the young girl walked in, he felt the unique aura on her body. Moreover, the young girl didn't have any prosthetics on her body. She was a healthy origin energy user. Xiao AI couldn't help but praise, "This girl is very special. Her origin energy is very stable and thick. Although I predict that she's a war elder, her foundation is quite solid. Look at her temperament and dress. She's definitely an expert among people of the same level." Ding Meng also nodded. The young girl's aura gave him the feeling of a wild beast that could erupt with amazing energy at any time and place. Seeing the young girl and her group come in, Hong Da's expression changed. He hesitated and said, "Jun Ling, aren't you?" Jun Ling tilted his head and glanced at him. "What about me? Do you think I'm dead?" Hong Da suddenly didn't speak. Jun Ling glanced at this group of people again. "When the tiger is not in the mountain, the monkey will be the overlord. You dare to call yourselves the strongest with just scrap metal?" Someone at the side seemed to be flushed red and couldn't help but want to flare up. Who knew that he would be stopped by Honda? "Let's go." Hong Da seemed to be very afraid of Jun Ling. He turned around and left without saying a word. Mei Ling greeted them. "Sister Jun Ling, are you going out again?" Jun Ling nodded and said, "Sister Mei Ling, please prepare some supplies for us. We're about to set off." "Okay, no problem." Mei Ling seemed to have thought of something and took the initiative to say, "Oh right, this brother phone is new. He also wants to collect materials. If you're going hunting, can you bring him along?" Jun Ling naturally also noticed Ding Meng. It had to be said that this young girl's eyes were very sharp. She stared at Ding Meng's hand for a long time before saying, "Little arrow." A young man behind her immediately stood up. "Sister Jun," Jun Ling said in a low voice, "give him a knife." Little Arrow immediately took off his knife and handed it to Ding Meng. This was a reverse short knife. It was less than half a meter long, and the belly of the knife was wider. The blade was slightly bent forward. After being unsheathed, the blade was condensed and heavy, but it didn't reflect light. Moreover, the material seemed to be a rare metal. One could tell at a glance that it was a sharp weapon. Ding Meng couldn't help but exclaim in admiration, "Good knife." This is a Gorka battle knife, also known as a dog leg knife. Little Arrow's eyes immediately revealed a look of pride. "Brother, you have good taste." Ding Meng flipped his wrist, and the knife immediately swished in his hand a few times. Then, with a click, it returned to its sheath. Jun Ling's eyes flashed. "Come with us." Ding Meng hurriedly said, "Thank you." "You're welcome." Jun Ling turned and said, "Since you're here, you're one of us." Ding Meng frowned. "When do we set off?" Jun Ling said, "When we're ready, we'll set off immediately." Her so-called preparation was the supplies that Mei Ling had provided. Most of the supplies were bottles of medicine. This was easy to understand. Origin ability users didn't need much food, but carrying medicine was obviously a preparation for injury. Could it be an attack by wild monsters? In addition to medicine, Mei Ling had also brought a large number of weapons. These weapons were all cold weapons, many of which were bone spike weapons made by Tsankong. Of course, during the preparation, Ding Meng couldn't help but ask Mei Ling about the origins of Jun Ling's group. 20 years ago, when Professor Tsankong came to Madison, Jun Ling and the others were the native people of this planet. They were the nomads of this prairie. They were very brave and good at fighting. Moreover, they lived a very primitive life of hunting. At that time, this was just a village with a very small population. It wasn't until Professor Tsankong in Yongwei came that this place was built into a small town. 20 years had passed, and the nomadic population was getting smaller and smaller. In Junling's generation, there were only a dozen or so of them left. The others, such as Hongda, were all outsiders. They didn't see eye to eye with each other. In the eyes of Hongda and the others, Junling and the others were primitive savages. They didn't even have decent clothes on them. They wore animal skins and leather. Junling and the others also looked down on Hongda and the others. These people were all too weak. However, Professor Tsankong treated everyone equally. As long as you could get your hands on animal skins and bones, he would give you what you wanted. Dingming had some appreciation for Junling. The girl was young, but she didn't like to talk much. She packed her things and went on the road. This was the attitude of doing things. Outside of Health Town was the prairie. This group of people didn't have any transport vehicles. They were completely replaced by walking. Of course, they couldn't be fast. However, Dingming found that these people's footsteps had a strange rhythm. Junling led the way in front. Every step she took, the footprints of the people behind her were exactly the same. It was the same for the third person who followed. It was exactly the same. It might not be difficult to walk 1 or 2 kilometers, but to walk continuously for 6 or 7 hours without a single step was worthy of admiration. This small team was clearly a well-disciplined military force. Xiao AI couldn't help but say, actually, as long as you use the right method, walking can be a kind of relaxation for the human body. The blood circulation and heartbeat will produce an effective balance and coordination. The brain will also get sufficient rest and can think about many things that you normally wouldn't think of. Dingming nodded. Junling and the others had undoubtedly done this. The person at the end of the team was Dingming. He definitely didn't use this method. From another point of view, Dingming hadn't really integrated into the team. However, Dingming was strong enough that this distance was nothing to him. After walking for an unknown period of time, the prairie seemed to have come to an end. A forest appeared in front of them. The slope of the ground began to change. It was estimated that there would be a mountain terrain ahead. Junling looked up at the sky. At this time, the sun couldn't be seen. The sky seemed to be dimming. It seemed that night was coming. Junling stopped and clapped her hands. Everyone, rest here for a while. A dozen people immediately sat in a circle on the grass. These people had been with Junling for a long time and didn't seem to like talking much. Everyone was busy. Some people lowered their heads to wipe their weapons, some checked their backpacks, and some even took out food to eat and drink. Little Arrow was sitting next to Dingming. He took the initiative to hand over a lump of black stuff. It looked like barbecued meat and didn't smell very good. Try it, Little Arrow said. Dingming didn't stand on ceremony. After receiving it, he imitated Little Arrow and took a big bite. Although the barbecued meat was as hard as a rock, it had a different taste when it entered his mouth. It was fragrant and sweet. Xiao AI said, I don't know what kind of meat this is. The energy it produces is no worse than a high-grade nutrient solution. Dingming didn't care about this. He swallowed the bowl-sized piece of meat in a few mouthfuls. He didn't thank Little Arrow, but there was a hint of a smile in Little Arrow's eyes. Junling suddenly pointed to the forest in the distance. His expression was solemn. After we enter from there, we will enter the endless forest. Brother Feng, if you can't hold on, you can return at any time. This was clearly an explanation for Dingming. Dingming asked curiously, what's the difference? Junling said, you'll know when you enter. Chapter 390. Dingming's prediction was completely accurate. As soon as they entered the forest, the terrain began to change. The slope continued to increase, and small mountains appeared in their field of vision. The grassland no longer existed, replaced by dense barbs and shrubs on the ground. The weather seemed to have changed as well. The sky was constantly gloomy and dark. The deeper they went, the lower the temperature. A drizzle began to fall from the sky, making them feel uncomfortable when it fell on their faces. After going a long distance, Dingming began to understand why Junling was unwilling to explain. He had seen this kind of terrain before. It was the Pandora V4 poison barrier planet where Meng Yin and the others were at. The dense forest was connected to each other, each thicker than the last. Giant trees kept appearing, and the mountains kept getting higher and steeper. Some of the giant trees were really frightening, like twisted pythons coiled on the ground. The sky was completely dark, and the drizzle turned into a light drizzle. The rainforest looked extremely ugly at night. If one stared at it for a long time, they would even hallucinate, as if they were in the mouth of the ancient monster in the basement of Black Gold Base. However, Ding Meng still did not find the so-called monster. His psychic vision was now fully activated, and together with Xiao AI, he could detect the other party 8,000 meters away. Not to mention monsters, there was not even a living creature. It was all this dark forest. Junling's footsteps did not stop at all. He continued to walk into the depths of the forest with ease. This place could no longer be called a forest. Countless towering trees rose from the ground, almost covering the night sky. The light drizzle turned into a heavy downpour. Ordinary people could not even open their eyes in this kind of heavy rain, but this group of people's night vision seemed to be particularly strong. Their movements were not hindered at all. Ding Meng finally could not help but ask, "What are you looking for?" The only person who answered him was Little Arrow. "Godstone, Godstone." Ding Meng was stunned. "What kind of Godstone?" Little Arrow sighed. "People of our race are different from you. You used the induction cabin to become a psionicist, right? We need to be near the Godstone to feel the psionic energy." Ding Meng was a little surprised. He also knew about the Godstone that Little Arrow was talking about. In the flourishing kingdom, his big brother and the others relied on the power of the holy tree to absorb origin energy. The Godstone that Little Arrow was talking about was most likely the Holy Spirit. The problem was that the Holy Spirit's environment wouldn't be as bad as this one. This ugly rainforest always gave people a gloomy, ominous, and dangerous feeling. "Can there be God's stones in this place?" Ding Meng asked doubtfully. Little Arrow sighed again. "There is. Not only are we looking for it, but the devouring monsters are also looking for it." This time, Ding Meng did not ask what the devouring monster was. His telekinetic vision had already sensed that something was wrong. Xiao AI also issued a warning. "Attention, unknown biological units have been detected 2,200 meters ahead. Some of them can even block signals." Ding Meng finally stopped in his tracks. Since he stopped, the others naturally stopped as well. "What's the problem?" Junling asked. Ding Meng sighed. "If we continue walking like this, we'll probably encounter monsters in 10 minutes. When he said this, someone in the group immediately mocked him. "We've been active in this forest for many years. Don't tell me we don't know the situation better than you." "Yeah, even if your starship flies up into the sky, you might not be able to detect the situation in this forest. You want to imitate Honda on your first time here? Pretending to know when you don't?" "Shut up." Junling coldly interrupted these people's ridicule. She pondered for a moment before speaking decisively. Little Arrow, Elephant, and Chin Chin split into 3 groups. Slow down and move forward together. This was choosing to believe in Ding Meng. The burly man called Elephant looked at Ding Meng with some dissatisfaction, but he still led the group obediently. Ding Meng shrugged helplessly. Little Arrow came over and took out the kukri saber. "Brother, be careful. Danger often comes suddenly here." Ding Meng said, "Take it for self-defense." "I don't need it." Little Arrow was a little surprised, but he didn't try to persuade him. Once these people entered a combat alert state, Ding Meng felt a violent and austere atmosphere. They were really different from ordinary origin ability users. The 3 groups of 4 people each advanced forward in a triangular formation. Junling stood alone in the center. 10 minutes later, there was indeed movement in the forest ahead. Even though it was raining heavily, an indescribable stench floated in the air. Ding Meng could be considered someone who had been through a lot. What kind of situation had he not experienced, but when he smelled this stench, even he had the urge to vomit. "Hold your breath," Junling reminded him. "The smell of these monsters is poisonous. We'll be fine, but you might not be able to withstand it. Stand back a little." Ding Meng nodded in return for her kindness. However, no matter how strong the poison was, it didn't exist for Ding Meng. The rain suddenly became heavier. The group of people slowly crept into the forest. With a whoosh, something seemed to rush down from the tree. Chi, chi, poo, tong. The thing that had rushed down immediately fell. In such darkness, only sounds could be heard. It was impossible to see the movements of the figures, nor the shadows of the swords. This was because these people's weapons basically didn't reflect light. After all, real killing weapons were usually not for you to see. However, Ding Ming's telekinetic vision had already turned the area into daylight. He could see very clearly that there was a flesh-eater lurking in the tree. However, it was different from a flesh-eater in the devouring world. Its head was also full of spikes, and its mouth was especially large. A circle of long fangs was very ferocious. The flesh-eater pounced down at an extremely fast speed, but this group of people was even faster. Before the flesh-eater landed, someone's long sword arrived first, instantly cutting off its fangs. By the time it landed, its pouncing target had already dodged to the side. A second person's short sword pierced its heart from the back. Almost at the same time, the third and fourth person's sword and long sword pierced its throat one after another, chopping off half of its head. With this level of attack, the flesh-eater could forget about surviving. Ding Ming was a little surprised. This was just a small group, but they had done it in the blink of an eye. These people's strength was definitely not as good as his, but their positioning, attacks, timing, positioning, coordination were all things that Ding Ming dared to say that even the well-trained Federation army might not be able to do so perfectly. Presumably, Junling's group had been fighting monsters day and day for 10 years, so they had a very good understanding of each other. Next, many flesh-eaters appeared in the trees, tree holes, and underground at the same time. They howled and rushed up, instantly surrounding them like a circle. However, the three groups on Junling's side also rushed up. There was another muffled sound in the forest. The three groups were like three lawnmowers, instantly cutting down a large number of monsters. Ding Ming, who was behind them, was also secretly amazed. These people were origin energy users, but they didn't have a single element. For example, that elephant clearly had heat waves on its body, but its attacks were more like those of the body-hardening element. It was very vigorous and fierce, and when it dodged, it was like those of the light element. Its speed was astonishing. "What's going on?" Ding Ming couldn't help but ask. Xiao AI said in a low voice, "They really are origin energy users. There's no doubt about that. My judgment is that they probably haven't constructed any origin or cultivated any techniques. They only have a pure foundation of origin energy, just like how you only came into contact with origin energy in Black Gold Base." Ding Ming was shocked. But their foundation is too high, right? And they're so proficient in martial arts. If they really did construct an origin and cultivate a technique, I don't even dare to imagine how powerful they would be. Xiao AI obviously agreed with his opinion. For example, the woman that Ding Ming called Qin had a very strange weapon. It seemed to be many crescent-shaped blades. With a wave of her hand, 6 or 7 blades danced in the air in different arcs. These blades probably couldn't pierce through the hardened skin of the flesh-eaters, but they struck the monster's eyes, quickly causing them to bleed and blind. It was naturally easy for the people behind to kill the monsters. Most importantly, Qin's blades could be sent out and retracted as she pleased. It was just like Ding Ming's telekinesis. In a short 3 minutes, more than 40 flesh-eaters were strewn across the field. They all died in the same way. Their hearts were pierced, their throats slit, their eyes gouged out, and their heads chopped off. The seemingly ordinary health town actually had such a savage and bloodthirsty group. However, at this time, someone was careless and left the formation without permission. As soon as Little Arrow saw so many corpses, his eyes lit up. He was used to seeing prey. Wielding his saber, he went up to one of the corpses. Flesh-eaters' bones and innards were Sing Kang's favorite. Everyone usually relied on these materials to exchange for supplies. Just as he bent down, a huge black shadow silently descended from the sky. By the time everyone realized that something was wrong, it was already too late. Qin cried out, "It's a big monster!" This was a huge flesh eater that was 5 meters tall. Not only was its body terrifying, but it was also very intelligent. It had been hiding in the treetops all this time, and at the same time had restrained its aura. Junling and the others didn't notice it at all. It waited until its companions were all killed, and when the people below let down their guard, then it chose the best time to strike. As it descended, not to mention pouncing on Little Arrow, its body alone could smash Little Arrow into a meat patty. Little Arrow raised his head. The monster's saliva dripping from its fangs was less than a meter away from his head. Little Arrow's body went cold. He knew that he was finished. At the same time, a fiery red light suddenly flashed. The entire forest was illuminated by this intense light. A mirror image of a huge tiger about the size of the big monster appeared. It whistled from afar, and with a bang, it hit the flesh-eater's body. The mirror image looked like it had crashed into the flesh-eater's body. Its fat body was sent flying on the spot. With a series of crackling sounds, it crashed into several bowl-sized trees. Chapter 391. Ding Ming's sacred tiger sun palm did not stop there. The image of the tiger head transformed into a sea of crimson origin energy in the air, drowning the flesh-eater like a flood. By the time the flesh-eater crashed into a mountain wall and fell down, it had already turned into a pile of white bones. The bones crackled and fell to the ground. The red light disappeared, and the torrential rain continued. The forest returned to darkness, but the forest was deathly silent. After an unknown period of time, everyone turned their heads in surprise. They all looked at Ding Ming in disbelief. This kind of martial skill was something they had never seen before, and it was something they yearned for even in their dreams. Ding Ming sighed. "It's okay. There are no more monsters here." Elephant slowly walked over and suddenly knelt in front of Ding Ming with a plop. Ding Ming was stunned. "What are you doing?" Elephant no longer had the disdain and ridicule from before. His face was solemn. "Can you accept my kneeling? I am willing to take you as my master." Ding Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You are an elder. How many years older than me? What right do I have?" Elephant's face was still filled with sincerity. "The strong are respected. It is not shameful for me to be your disciple." Ding Ming could only raise his head to look at Junling. Junling's expression was still cold and indifferent, but he nodded slightly. "Our tribe respects the strong. The strong are respected." Ding Ming sighed. "Get up. If you want to learn this move, I can teach it to you in the future. However, you will need to have a sensory pod." Elephant immediately revealed a look of ecstasy. He respectfully kowtowed 3 times before standing up. The others looked at Elephant with envious expressions. Little Arrow finally recovered from his shock. He walked over to Ding Ming's side. He still did not speak, but there was a trace of gratitude in his eyes. The team quickly returned to normal, and everyone began to clean up the battlefield. These people picked up their weapons and dissected the corpses of the flesh-eaters. Their movements were far more skillful than a surgeon's, and the monster's stomachs were cut open in just a few moves. Just like Hong Da's group, this group of people also collected the bones of monsters. However, they did not collect all the bones. Instead, they selected the bones that were of higher quality. Ding Ming also noticed that they all collected 1 or 2 ribs from the monster's heart and put them into their backpacks. However, Junling did not make a move. She stood in front of the pile of bones that had been burnt by Ding Ming, deep in thought. Her expression was very solemn. "What's wrong?" Ding Ming walked over. Junling's tone also became serious. "This is a small leader of the devouring monsters. It shouldn't appear in this outer area." Ding Ming frowned. "This is still the periphery." Junling nodded and said, "The outer perimeter is usually filled with ordinary devouring monsters. The group we encountered today is considered to be larger in number. I didn't expect that there would be a small leader among them." Ding Ming said, "Is there a reason for this?" Junling sighed, which was rare. "Our race has been hunting on this planet for generations. I once heard my ancestors mention that this planet was originally a beautiful grassland and a vast ocean. I don't know when it started, but these monsters appeared on the ground. At first, There weren't many of them, but the strange thing is that they can't be completely eliminated. Ding Ming said, "How long have they existed?" Junling shook her head and said, "I'm not sure, but they have existed since my grandfather was still alive." Ding Ming thought to himself that they had existed for at least 100 years. Junling said, "Wherever they go, they will destroy the environment and pollute the earth. They will create the rainforest you see now. We call it the endless forest." Ding Ming said, "Do you mean that their territory is extremely vast?" Junling's expression became more solemn. 10 years ago, this place was still a beautiful grassland, but now it has become their outer perimeter. They're like a virus that constantly nibbles away at our planet. Ding Ming's expression also became solemn. "You have been fighting them for generations?" Junling's expression was complicated. They are constantly getting stronger. There are more and more types of monsters, and they are becoming more and more difficult to deal with. Also, their intelligence is gradually increasing. After so many years of fighting, there are only a dozen of us left. Ding Ming said, "How big is their territory now?" Junling glanced at him. "With Health Town as the center, this is the last grassland. If we continue to be defeated, we can only live on the ocean." Ding Ming was shocked. How did they expand so quickly? Junling said, "It's because of the God Stone. The God Stone can make us stronger, but it can also make them stronger." Ding Ming said, "Why don't you ask for help from the outside world?" Junling shook his head helplessly. "The places they pollute will produce a very special shielding. The starship's radar can't see anything at all. Moreover, this place is too remote." Professor Zing also gave us a suggestion after he came here. Ding Ming said, "What suggestion?" Junling said, "If the monsters attack Health Town, everyone will have to leave here. Of course, our tribe will definitely fight to the end. We will never surrender." Ding Ming sighed. He could understand Junling's feelings. To Junling and the others, Madison was their home. After a long period of war, their home had been invaded bit by bit. Their family and friends had died in battle one after another. Seeing that there was only one piece of land left, how could they leave at this time? Especially this kind of fighting tribe. They would rather die than flee. Fleeing was more shameful than dying. Ding Ming sighed. "But if this goes on, Health Town will fall sooner or later." Junling nodded. "Actually, I have other plans. If it falls completely, I will bring everyone to the God Wars Starfield to learn the high-level martial arts and cultivation methods of eucyanosis. When we are strong enough, we will come back to reclaim our lost land." She was still a little smart. There was no such thing as going all the way. Sometimes, one could not be too stubborn when it came to fighting. If one could not win, one had to pay attention to strategy. A moment of anger would lead to a bloodbath. Ding Ming looked at her. "Thank you for telling me this." Junling said, "I told you before. We are on the same side." "Oh." Ding Ming smiled. "You trust me that much?" Junling also revealed a faint smile. "Do you know why I trust you?" Ding Ming was curious. "Why?" Junling said, "When I asked Little Arrow to give you the knife, I noticed that the calluses between your fingers are very thick. Your skin is yellowish with a tinge of black, and the texture is rough and smooth. I think you are an expert in swords and sabers. Also, you have a strong murderous aura. Many people must have died in your hands. Although I don't know where you came from, I know that you are the same as us." Ding Ming could not help but smile bitterly. Junling frowned. "Why? You don't believe me?" Ding Ming sighed. "You are right. Sometimes the monster is not close, but you can feel it nearby. It is grinding its teeth and drooling. The dangerous aura on its body is murderous aura." Junling revealed a look of admiration. "I said we are the same." Ding Ming changed his words. "From Health Town to here, the distance is really not close. You said this place is the periphery, but from what you mean, it seems that we are going deeper." Junling said, "We usually hunt in the periphery, including Hong Da's group. Almost every time, we can wipe out the devourers in the periphery. However, the rainforest area has been silently expanding. We can't even feel when it expanded. Moreover, there are more and more devourers. Logically speaking, Their reproductive ability should not be so strong. Ding Ming hesitated. You mean? Junling was deep in thought. There must be a deeper reason behind this. Our ancestors couldn't destroy these monsters. I'm thinking that we definitely didn't destroy their core. Ding Ming understood. You want to destroy their core? Junling shook his head. If they have a core, with our strength, we may not be able to destroy it. But at the very least, we should know where the core is. What is it? What did they do with the missing Godstone? Ding Ming was silent. He had a feeling that if they continued to move forward, they would encounter more dangerous situations. However, Junling and the others were a fighting race. Once they made up their minds, it was difficult to change them. It was useless to persuade them. At this moment, the battlefield had been cleaned up. Junling clapped his hands. Everyone get ready. We will set off immediately. Ding Ming thought for a moment and turned on his wristwatch. The signal jamming in this place was indeed powerful. He couldn't even see anything on the screen. He could only hear Makoto Fuma's voice. We're following behind you, but the terrain you're in is too complicated. There are too many trees in the sky, making it difficult for the radar to scan everything. We can only maintain a distance of 5 kilometers to maintain communication with you. If you continue forward, communication won't be guaranteed. Shuiyu Mountain's voice quickly sounded. His tone was very serious. I just saw the video you sent back. Ding Ming said, Is this place the Devourer's world? Shuiyu Mountain said, I am not sure. It can be said that it is, and it can also be said that it is not. Ding Ming was surprised. Why? Shui Weishan said, There are many places here that are similar to the devouring world. From the perspective of you humans, the first thing is the pollution. This rainforest was originally a grassland, but it definitely became a rainforest because of the pollution. However, the difference is that its poison is very strange. It doesn't cause much harm to the human body, but it has a huge impact on the environment. This point is very different from the devouring world. I'm guessing that if you continue forward, the terrain should have a qualitative change. Ding Ming could not help but turn his head to look at Junling. You heard it too? Junling returned to her cold expression. Let's move forward. Ding Ming was a little helpless. Shuiyu Mountain comforted him. It's okay. Let's move forward. I am also very curious about the terrain ahead. Chapter 392. Although it was said that there was nothing to do, there was still work for this group of people. After advancing another 9,000 meters, they encountered 3 waves of devourer monsters along the way, and there were 2 small leaders among them. Of course, with this group of people's ferocious strength and tacit cooperation, killing 3 groups of devourer monsters was not a problem. Moreover, with the lesson of Little Arrow, everyone became very vigilant. They had to be patient and wait for the small leaders to appear. Then, everyone worked together to kill them before cleaning up the battlefield. Ding Ming and Junling did not make a move in these few battles. To Ding Ming, these small monsters were not worth his time. However, Junling's expression was even more serious because Shuiyu Mountain's guess had become reality. The environment in front of them was no longer as simple as a rainforest. These ugly giant trees and vegetation were showing signs of fossilization. Their entire bodies were turning black and hard. They were like stones, but they were not real stones. They were plants, but they had lost the vitality of plants. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky, and the rain poured down. This degree of rain gave people the feeling of a storm on the sea. The ground was no longer visible, and it was all mud and water. Feng Jian's voice rang out. There's a very strong electromagnetic field here. It is very unstable and very violent. It seems to be controlled by some kind of energy. Shuiyu Mountain sighed. I can now confirm one thing. Even if this damn place is not the real Devourer world, the principle of its formation is exactly the same as the Devourer world. Pollution, poison, mutation. Even the low-level flesh eaters are mutated. He seemed to feel that this explanation was not accurate and continued. There are many races in the Devourer world, and they are divided into different categories. Different types of homogenized environments result in different environments. At least, The environment in front of us should be one of the more high-end environments in the Devour world. According to Miss June, the small leaders you met should be warriors. There must be commanders. If this place has existed for hundreds of years, there should be at least an elder. If there is a sect master and a demon empress, then we are in big trouble. My suggestion is we should retreat. Retreat. Ding Ming's eyes suddenly burst with a cold light. What's wrong? Junling also felt that something was wrong. Ding Ming gritted his teeth and said, "A large number of enemies have appeared in front of us. Their numbers are beyond your imagination. Listen to me. Retreat quickly." Junling noticed that even Ding Ming's expression had become terrifying. She also knew that the situation had changed greatly. She took the initiative to clap her hands and said, "Little arrow, elephant, Qin, unify the formation, set up traps, and prepare long-range weapons. We'll retreat." It was definitely too late to set up a trap at this time. The water on the ground was turbulent, and their movement speed would be reduced, let alone setting up a trap. However, these people's long-range weapons were very interesting. Everyone's waists were filled with half-a-meter-long aerial guns. Looking at the material, it was obvious that they were made by Tsankong. There was even an alloy added to them, and the spearheads were dark and sharp. Ding Ming also took out his weapon. First, he took out the God Slayer ion pulse gun from the rainbow backpack. The gun was 5 meters long, like two black cylinders, one big and one small, joined together. The front end was an energy-gathering light ball, and it looked very murderous. Next, the rainbow backpack activated the nano-deformation device, and the backpack unfolded its wings. It was as if Ding Ming had wings on his body. The wings spewed out colorful crystal flames, and Ding Ming easily flew into the sky. "You guys retreat first. I'll cover you. There's a starship behind us." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. A starship was in existence that they could only look up to. It was not that Madison did not have any starships, but one or two would occasionally land in Health Town, and they would leave very quickly. Now that they heard that there was a starship to help, everyone was immediately filled with fighting spirit. At this time, a thick bolt of purple lightning tore through the sky and came down from the night sky. With a kacha sound, it struck the water 50 meters in front of everyone. The water surface immediately exploded, and the force of the explosion did not diminish. With a rumbling sound, it spread and exploded, setting off waves several meters high. Although Junling and the others were all origin ability users and were not afraid of electricity, lightning was the wrath of heaven and earth. This power still made everyone's expression turn cold, especially when it was so close. It would be a lie to say that they were not scared. This lightning seemed to be a warning that a great battle was coming. The water under their feet suddenly became rapid, and the torrential rain formed a curtain. Suddenly, pairs of red demon eyes of devouring monsters appeared in the curtain of rain, just like the stars that slowly emerged in the sky after nightfall. However, this time, the number of devouring monsters was even more than the stars in the sky. They were densely packed and blotted out the sky. In Ding Ming's telekinesis vision, other than these small monsters, there were larger and more terrifying monsters in the distance. They were probably ferocious beasts at the level of commander demon generals. Even further away, the monster army was still surging toward them. Even with telekinesis vision, there was no end to it. It was even more turbulent than the flood on the ground. To be honest, even Ding Ming was shocked by this scene. With such numbers and scale, it would be extremely difficult to resist without an army or a fleet. Attack. Slowly retreat. Junling gritted her teeth and ordered. After all, she was experienced. Facing such a large number, she knew that she could not blindly retreat. In the eyes of the monsters, running was escaping. As long as you ran, the monsters would swarm you and drown you like a tide. In an instant, not even your bones would be left. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The flying guns in everyone's hands were like a storm of arrows, and the devouring monsters that rushed toward them fell backward. All the monsters were shot in the heart, eyes, forehead, and other vital parts. Junling and the group had obviously worked hard for many years in throwing. Not only was their strength powerful, but their accuracy was also extremely high. Of course, at this time, Dingming was definitely not idle. The energy ball of the Godslayer pulse gun had been fully charged, and it instantly fired pulses of energy. These were not bullets, but artillery shells. They were shaped like comets with long tails, and they scattered at a 10-degree angle. Each artillery shell was larger than the rollers of a transport truck. This kind of specially assembled artillery shell would produce a shock effect when it hit the ground. First, it would blast a deep hole in the ground. Just this one shot alone could turn 6 or 7 devouring monsters into ashes on the spot. Next, the deep hole in the ground would produce a chain explosion. A second explosion would occur at a height of 1 meter from the ground. This damage was quite considerable, and countless pieces of bone and flesh would splatter in all directions. Next, the radiation would form an electromagnetic force field, producing an energy net that would tear apart the enemy units. In the field of vision of Junling and the others, Dingming was a world of light. No matter how fierce the monsters were, the result after entering was that they would disappear. Disappearing meant that they would completely turn into nothingness. Finally, after a round of sweeping fire, the huge eye of light formed would produce a third explosion. This explosion would not only flatten the monsters, but also the surrounding giant trees and mountain walls. This Godslayer pulse gun was so powerful that even Origin ability users below the War Elder level would not dare to take it head-on. A round of bombardment was enough to destroy heaven and earth. Back then, in order to recruit Dingming, the Transit String Company had been willing to spend a lot of money. This gun was still in the design stage and had not been officially introduced by the Xinghong Group. In the end, they had given it to Dingming to try it out. However, it was still the same old saying. There was definitely a price to pay behind the prestige. A round of sweeping fire would take about 30 seconds, but the charging time would take a minute. Once Dingming's firepower stopped, the monster army gathered again with a whoosh and surged forward again. Their momentum was like a flood, and each of them was fearless of death. This scene gave people the feeling that these devouring monsters were really rushing to their deaths. Boom, 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 boom. In the depths of the rainforest, white light shot out in all directions, and deep craters appeared one after another. It was really an explosion that caused the sun and moon to lose their light. Sand and stones flew everywhere, and the water flow was broken. Xiao AI said anxiously, "This won't do. There are too many enemies. We can't resist it all." Dingming also saw that the charging time of the Godslayer pulse gun was too long. As long as he stopped firing, dozens of monsters would immediately take advantage of the gap in firepower to rush over and engage in close combat with Junling and the others. Junling and the others were indeed strong enough. Each of them could deal with several monsters single-handedly. Junling herself was using a bright and sharp green longsword, which seemed to be covered in a layer of faint green flames. When she waved it around, dozens of monsters could not get close to her. Moreover, her martial arts realm and combat skills were very high. Her whole body flew up and down between boulders and trees. Her movements were very nimble, but her attacks were quite fierce. Whenever she drew her sword, there would be blood. In the blink of an eye, dozens of monsters fell to the ground with a loud bang. Even so, the monster army behind them was still charging forward like a flood. It looked like this trend was increasing. Xiao AI said, "Switch to unlimited mode and maximize the energy usage." This time, the Godslayer's energy-gathering ball of light slowly turned red. With a whoosh, an extremely thin and strong red light shot out. This was a completely straight laser. Once it was shot out, it would be over 100 meters away. No matter what kind of monster these monsters were, as long as they came into contact with this red light, their hardened skin would immediately be cut open. And if they were hit by the red light, their heads would be separated from their bodies on the spot. This was the giant elephant attack system of the Godslayer pulse gun. Simply put, It was the weapon designer of the Starbow Group who had copied the railgun on the starship to the pulse gun. It meant that no matter how strong you were, in the face of this continuous and astonishing firepower, even a giant elephant would fall. Hence, the name Giant Elephant. Of course, this giant elephant was definitely not as powerful as the railgun. This was a mini version of the railgun. Chi. The red light was like a stick that had descended from the sky. It swept through the monster army in a messy manner. Countless devourer monsters were cut in half and burned at the same time. Then, they were washed away by the current. However, the monster army behind them was still charging forward. They stepped on the corpses of their companions and attacked in a frenzy. Dingmeng did not care too much. He held the gun with one hand and fired. His other hand constantly reached into the side of his backpack to grab the energy bombs that slid out from it. No matter what kind of bomb it was, he threw it down without hesitation. Large patches of white light flashed on the surface of the water again. Dozens of light beams were blasted into one. They could clearly see that the current had been completely dyed green by the mucus of the monster army's corpses. Chapter 393. Hold on. We still have 1 minute and 30 seconds to reach the battlefield. Makoto Fujin's voice rang out from the wristwatch. Dingmeng was naturally able to hold on, but Junling and the others could no longer hold on. At this time, the monster army was no longer charging from the front. Instead, they appeared from all directions, surrounding the dozen or so people in a tight circle. Blades flashed and swords flashed, but the monsters were also constantly rushing to their deaths, flying here and there like ghostly shadows. Dingmeng turned around and cursed silently. He had no idea where these devour monsters had come from. Although he had single-handedly overturned the river and the monsters on the other side, the effects of technological weapons on the other side were negligible when compared to the overall battle situation and the number of monsters on the other side. This 1 minute and 30 seconds was undeniably hard to endure. Someone in the team had already been injured. A young warrior had many shocking scratches on his arm. The most serious part of the wound was so deep that his bones could be seen. Furthermore, the wound was quickly turning green and began to rot. Dingmeng had no choice but to use the rainbow backpack to fly back. He had also summoned Kyoka Sujetsu, forming its initial fragmented form. Hundreds of feathers turned into a tornado under the effect of telekinesis. To be more precise, it was like an azure viper. The viper slithered in and out of the enemy's group, and wherever it went, blood and flesh would fly and bones would shatter. To be honest, Dingmeng had rarely experienced such a cruel battle. The clash of spears and swords formed a net of attacks. It felt like a swarm of locusts was crazily charging at him. You could stomp them into meat paste with a foot, slap them to death with a slap, or even poison them to death with a breath. But no matter how you killed them, they continued to charge at you, one after another, forever attacking. After a long time, you would feel a little numb. These devourer monsters did not seem to know what pain and fear were. They fell in batches, and the troops behind them continued to charge at them in greater numbers. They completely ignored death, and there was no end to it. This kind of fighting style was enough to make anyone tremble in fear. Starship Butcher arrived very quickly. A strong light flashed in the sky. The searchlight at the bottom of the starship was turned on, illuminating the empty space below. Feng Jianjin had never experienced the Devourer World War, so he felt his scalp go numb at the sight of the monster army below. Junling and the others were completely surrounded, and the encirclement had shrunk to 30 meters in diameter. Everyone was still brandishing their swords to resist, and the scene felt as if countless flies were flying at them. Even though the devourers that pounced on them were all killed after a series of flashes of swords and sabers, the corpses on the ground quickly piled up, and the original appearance of the empty space could not be seen. Shui Mountain was very calm. This is considered a small scale. If it's a large scale, even the sound can shock you to death. Fujin couldn't hold it in any longer. Stop bragging. This ship doesn't have an advanced system like the music projection system. Hurry up and release the ladder. I'll support them. Although it was called support, Starship Butcher was a transport starship, and its weapon system was very weak. It only had 8 small electric particle laser cannons at the bow and stern. There was an interceptor missile system at the side, but it was useless in such an environment. Who could intercept? The starship quickly hovered 50 meters above the ground, and the steel ladder was extended downwards. The 16 cannons were all activated, and the energy balls were directed towards the ground. Feng Jianjin still had some shooting skills. The 16 cannons used the Heavenly Maiden Scatterflower style to shoot out electric particles in all directions. This was much more effective than Ding Meng's pulse gun. The ground continued to explode, setting off streaks of red light that bombarded the monster army from the inside out. Large batches of devourer monsters were directly turned into ashes, and the shockwaves produced by the explosions formed an extremely strong resistance against the monster army. Junling and the others finally successfully climbed up the suspension ladder and climbed up with difficulty. However, when the starship slowly rose into the air, it was completely a sea of monsters below. These devourers seemed to know the power of the starship and could only roar towards the sky. The sound was really disturbing. After everyone successfully boarded the starship, Ding Meng was the last to fly into the connecting cabin. The starship slowly turned around, and with a glaring crystal flame, disappeared into the depths of the clouds in the blink of an eye. In the command hall, the injured young soldier's entire arm had rotted like a withered branch, and the skin on his body was also withering. It was obvious that he was deeply poisoned. He looked very weak and could only curl up on the steel plate. All his companions were kneeling in a circle around him. Everyone's expression was very solemn. They seemed to be praying and also seemed to be performing some kind of ceremony. Not long after, Junling raised his head and looked at the elephant beside him. The elephant's expression seemed to be very sympathetic, and it simply closed its eyes. "What are you all doing?" Ding Meng finally flew in. Junling gritted his teeth and said, "Little Leopard is deeply poisoned. He can't be saved." Fu Jinjun could not help but say, "This starship has a medical cabin. His injuries can be cured in a few minutes." Junling shook his head helplessly. "It's not the same. After a while, you will become the same kind as those devouring monsters. If you don't want to lose your starship, we'd better end his suffering." When Little Leopard, who was lying on the ground, heard this, not only did he not have any expression of pain, but a kind of resolute expression appeared on his face. His gaze was fixed on the elephant, as if he was waiting for the elephant to do something. Little Arrow was already quietly explaining to Ding Meng, "Little Leopard and Elephant are biological brothers. They have been practicing martial arts and hunting together since they were young. They have a very good relationship. Outsiders have no right to interfere." When Ding Meng heard this, he was not very happy. He stepped forward and said, "There's no poison that I can't cure." At this moment, the elephant was holding his dagger and looked like he was about to stab it into Ding Meng's heart. When he saw that it was Ding Meng who had stepped forward, he was immediately stunned. He might not believe what others had said, but he knew how powerful Ding Meng was. However, he was still a little hesitant. "Master, you can cure the poison? I already told you not to call me master or disciple." Ding Meng was a little unhappy. He casually waved his hand, and the elephant's dagger automatically left his hand and flew lightly into Ding Meng's hand. With the current strengthening and tempering of Ding Meng's body, a dagger of this level could not even cut through his skin. Ding Meng did not want to appear too shocking, so he simply circulated the origin energy in his body, forcing his chi and blood to surge up. Then he spat out a mouthful of golden mist. To others, it was mist, but in fact, only Xiao AI knew that it was a mixture of the blood mist that Ding Meng had used to temper his source of essence. As soon as the mist enveloped Junior Leopard's body, his withered skin recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. The green wounds on his arms also became bright red. Obviously, the poison had been dispelled. In less than 30 seconds, Junior Leopard suddenly jumped up like a carp. He was really full of vitality like a leopard. Junling and the others were dumbfounded. The elephant suddenly turned from worry to joy. He rushed forward and punched Junior Leopard's chest twice. After making sure that he was fine, the two brothers hugged each other, jumping and laughing. Only then did Junling turn his head and look at Ding Meng with sincere eyes. "I never say thank you, but this time I solemnly say, Mr. Feng, thank you. You have saved the precious lives of my people." Before Ding Meng could answer, Masa Fuma was dissatisfied. "Ding Meng, you are really using my name to swindle people everywhere." "Miss June, I am Masa Fuma. His name is Ding Meng." Jun Ling's expression instantly turned cold. "You are lying to me?" Ding Meng helplessly spread his hands. "When I first came here, I didn't mean to hide it. Please understand. As you can see, this is a pirate ship. I stole before. I had no choice. In order to hide it, I used his name." Jun Ling coldly stared at him. "I don't like people lying to me." At this time, the elephant and Junior Leopard had already walked over. They looked like they were about to kneel down and kowtow, but who knew that they couldn't kneel down? Ding Meng's telekinesis had already lifted them up. "Don't take me as your master. If you won't learn, I can teach you." Ding Meng looked at Junior Leopard. "It's best if you use the medical cabin. Your wound hasn't completely recovered." In this group, perhaps only Junling and Little Arrow were usually more talkative. Elephant and Junior Leopard were not good with words. Elephant respectfully bowed to Ding Meng before obediently retreating. Junling was a little surprised. She turned to Ding Meng and said, "This is the highest courtesy my tribe can give to a friend. Seeing that you saved Junior Leopard, I will forget about you lying to me." Shuiyu Mountain was amused. "Little sister, what if you really want to be calculative?" Junling coldly replied, "None of the people who have lied to me are still alive." Shuiyu Mountain couldn't help but ask, "Were they all killed by you?" Junling said, "I cut off their tongues, gouged out their lips, and threw them into the forest of infinity to feed the devouring monster." Ding Meng couldn't help but look at each other. The fierce style of this fighting tribe was not something that ordinary people could understand. However, it was easy to understand. These people only had a few things to do since they were born: cultivate, practice martial arts, hunt, get injured, recover, survive, and then continue this cycle until one day they die in battle or die of old age. However, looking at the current situation and environment, there was probably not a single person who died of old age. Therefore, their thinking was quite simple, direct, and sharp. Ding Meng coughed dryly. "Miss June, I have no ill intentions towards you. If I did, you would have died long ago." These words were a little unpleasant to hear, but no matter how unpleasant they were, Junling had to admit that in the short moment of fierce battle, Ding Meng's strength far exceeded theirs in terms of origin ability, martial arts, equipment, and technology. It was even possible that he was at a height that they could never reach in their lifetime. Only then did Junling's expression soften. She sighed slightly. "Fine, I admit it. Ding Meng, I have a request that I hope you can agree to." Ding Meng said, "Please speak." Junling hesitated. "Previously, when you used that red tiger head move in the forest, can you teach us that martial art? I can guarantee that we won't leak it out after we learn it." Hearing this request, Fujin Masa laughed inwardly. "I was wondering what kind of incredible request you had." So it's the sacred Yang Tiger Palm. This is a martial art that can be found all over the Federation. Basically, everyone knows it, but you actually treat it like a treasure. However, Ding Meng didn't laugh. He immediately turned his head and said, "Is there a sensor cabin on the ship?" Fujin Masa couldn't help but laugh. If there isn't even a sensor cabin, a medical cabin, and a nutrition cabin, then this ship can't be called a starship. It should be renamed as scrap metal. Ding Meng then replied to Junling with a serious expression, "No problem. With your aptitude, I guarantee that you'll be able to learn it in a short period of time." Junling revealed a trace of joy. "Many thanks." Ding Meng said, "You said it before. No need to thank me. Since you're here, you're one of us." Chapter 394. Ding Meng was willing to agree to Junling's request not because of a low-level martial art like Sacred Yang Tiger Palm, but because he had his own selfish motives. Thinking back to when he was in the black gold base on the dead silent star, he had been imprisoned many times because he didn't have any helpers. Now that he was on Madison, he couldn't repeat the same mistake. Having more helpers would undoubtedly be safer, especially this butcher. Needless to say, it would attract pirate reinforcements. After all, Fujinjun and Shuiyu Mountain were crystal energy artificial bodies, so they couldn't directly join the battle. However, with Junling's group, it would be completely different. The safety of the starship would be guaranteed, not to mention that the starship was something that Junling and the others needed. As for ordinary martial arts techniques like the sacred Yang Tiger Palm, Dingming had a lot of them in her backpack. Before she went to the Linda department, the Starry Rainbow Corporation had prepared a lot of memory chips in her rainbow backpack. There were even some rare martial arts techniques. Of course, Dingming definitely wouldn't reveal a heaven-defying martial art like Diamond Star technique, because it was his trump card. In fact, Dingming, Fujinjun, and Shuiyu Mountain were also very interested in teaching Junling and the others martial arts techniques. How should he put it? If Junling and the others were placed in the Federal Empire, they would be very talented seedlings. First of all, this group was very young. The oldest was Elephant, who was only 33 years old this year. The others were about the same age as Dingming, around 25 years old. Junling was even 2 years older than Dingming. Secondly, they were already origin ability users, so there was no need for them to break through. The most important point was that this group of people started fighting from the moment they were born, and every battle was a life and death struggle. It was different from the training in schools and dojos. The remaining 10 or so people were all elites who had survived the cruel years of battle. Their physical fitness was exceptionally good, and their combat skills were proficient. It could be said that even Dingming and Fujinjun weren't as good as them. If this group of people were to grow up, they would definitely be an amazing force. "We can't leave Madison yet," Fujinjun suddenly said, and at the same time, opened the interstellar map on the control panel. "Oh," Dingming frowned. "Why?" Feng Jianjun had already started explaining on the map. "This starfield is called the God War Domain." Dingming asked, "Is it the League of Gods?" Fujin Masa nodded. "The database here shows that the Sacred War Zone is not a planetary system, but a celestial city transformed by a sect using a starship many years ago." Dingming said, "Now that you mention it, I remember a place, Flying Star City." Feng Jinjun was a little surprised. "I didn't expect you to have been to the Flying Star City. However, the scale of the deity battlefield is 1,000 times bigger than the Flying Star City." "It's that big?" Dingming was surprised. "Indeed, I've heard of it." Junling walked over. The God Battle Domain continuously absorbed other starships and fortresses, constantly transforming and expanding. After a few hundred years of development, the 6 sects finally joined forces and formed a super interstellar city that floated in space. Feng Jianjin explained, "That's right, it can accommodate more than 1 billion people, and its scale isn't smaller than a planet." Because of its size, they started to build a starfield outside the deity battlefield many years ago. At first, it was the first ring, second ring, and third ring. 10 years ago, it had already developed to the 34th ring. The closer to the inner ring, the richer the resources are. The 6 sects are in the inner ring, and the closer to the outer ring, the weaker the sects are. As for the outer ring, it's just like the Federal Empire. You know, mercenaries, pirates, refugees, and even slaves. Dingming was speechless. The scale was more than 1,000 times bigger than the Flying Star City. It was probably more than 10,000 times bigger. How powerful and terrifying was the Great Wall of Interstellar? Junling also revealed an envious expression. "I've also heard that the interior of the deity battlefield has been transformed into a paradise. Living there is like living in a big city. Our clan's greatest wish is to go to the deity battlefield, but our place is too remote. It's not realistic even if we want to fly there." Dingming sighed silently. A big city might not be as good as a prairie with blue skies and white clouds. Sometimes, when modern civilization became more developed, it made humans yearn for the original living environment with clear water and green mountains. The complexity of the city was far beyond what you could imagine. However, he didn't say these words because Feng Jianjun started to explain again. Even if the butcher flies at full speed, it will take at least 5 years to reach the outer ring of the deity battlefield. Moreover, the situation in outer space is complicated and chaotic. There are conflicts and battles everywhere. It's very difficult for the transport ship to reach there. Ding Meng sighed. But according to what Miss June said, the pollution in the endless forest is so great and fast. Only the health town is left. I reckon we don't have much time left. Junling was silent. Her expression was a little absent-minded. Yes. According to my previous prediction, the health town will become a part of the endless forest in 2 years. But now, it seems that it won't take 2 years. It will probably fall in 2 months. Feng Jianjun was shocked. Why? Junling said, because we encountered an abnormal phenomenon tonight. The abnormal phenomenon naturally referred to the monster army. Ding Ming couldn't help but ask, have you guys encountered so many devouring monsters before? Junling said, I haven't. The most we encountered was over 1,000. That time, we fought for an entire day and night and sacrificed 3 of our brothers and sisters to kill them all. Moreover, we went deeper into the forest. What we encounter today should be the prelude to the beast tide. Beast tide? Prelude? Ding Ming and the other 2 asked in unison. Junling nodded. My ancestors once said that every 35 years or so, there will be a beast tide in the endless forest. On the eve of the outbreak, there will be countless monsters active in the periphery. Any human who enters will be besieged. I haven't seen a beast tide since I was born, and I haven't seen an elephant either. Judging from the time, what we encounter tonight is the prelude to the beast tide. Shuiyu Mountain said, what if the beast tide really breaks out? A trace of fear flashed in Junling's dark eyes. All the monsters in the endless forest will come out in full force and directly cross the border into the grassland. During that time, these devouring monsters won't be afraid of the sun. When the beast tide ends, the grassland they occupy will become a part of the endless forest. During this period, no one could stop them. Her tone was a little gloomy. Judging from the prelude tonight, they almost lost their lives. When the beast tide really breaks out, they didn't dare to imagine how terrifying it would be. For a moment, everyone fell into silence. Ding Ming's gaze fell on Shuiyu Mountain. Elder, have you encountered such a situation? Shuiyu Mountain sighed. I don't know the reason, but I have an example for you to refer to. Ding Ming said, please speak. Shuiyu Mountain's eyes flashed. In our devouring world, there is an ancient race called the devouring royal family. They don't feed on other creatures. Instead, they rely on devouring their own kind to survive. Devouring their own kind? Ding Ming and the others were shocked. Shuiyu Mountain sighed. For example, if there are 2 devouring monsters and one of them is stronger, it will definitely devour the other. As long as there are enough resources, it can evolve and mutate. Then, it will reproduce. When these offspring grow up, it will devour them and evolve further. So on and so forth. It will devour and evolve again and again. In the end, it will grow into a very terrifying lord or queen. Ding Ming and the others were stunned. They had never seen such a monster that devoured its own offspring. They couldn't even imagine it. Shuiyu Mountain continued. Although it grows quite quickly, there are many conditions required for this process. First of all, no one knows the origin of this race. It is said that they have existed for a very long time. They boast that they have the noblest bloodline in the devouring world. They don't just devour their own kind. They will only devour creatures that are stronger than them or creatures that are worthy of being devoured. This is qualitatively different from the water droplet. Ding Ming and Feng Jianjun nodded together. They could understand this point. As long as the water droplet was a living creature, it would devour it. Secondly, if it devours its own kind, the other kind must be as strong as it. Only by devouring can it evolve. Devouring weaker creatures or creatures of the same kind has no effect on evolution. Devouring requires a long time, sufficient resources, and a relatively safe environment. Shui Weishan paused for a moment and said, "Let's make a hypothesis. If there really is such a thing in the endless forest, then its evolution time would be 35 years. Then, during this period, it would need sufficient resources. Were these resources?" Junling immediately reacted. "Those devouring monsters are also constantly looking for god stones. Are the god stones its resource?" Shuiyu Mountain continued. "Creatures of the same kind have already grown stronger. Now that it is time for it to devour, other monsters will definitely be chased out from the depths of the forest. This way, it will create a relatively safe environment." Junling said, "I understand. This is the so-called beast tide?" Shuiyu Mountain said, "I'm just giving you an example. The various strange things in this place might not necessarily be the ancient devouring monster that I'm talking about. What if it succeeds in evolving?" Ding Ming asked. Shuiyu Mountain sighed and said, "Every time it succeeds in evolving, its strength can be said to increase exponentially. The changes are not something you can imagine. It is even more terrifying than the water droplet's evolution. The water droplet needs to rely on human technology like starships to wander around, but the water droplet doesn't need anything. It could just rely on its physical body to travel across space. I've seen it in the history of the devouring world. A few billion years ago, after the devouring monster evolved into an ancient demon, it could directly enter a wormhole and travel millions of light years away without suffering any damage. It is also one of the powerful creatures that dominated the universe for hundreds of millions of years." Ding Ming and the others sighed in admiration when they heard this. The universe was so vast and full of wonders. Junling said, "But I don't think that such an ancient devouring monster exists on our planet." Shuiyu Mountain nodded and said, "In theory, it shouldn't exist. According to the history books, because this monster is too terrifying and evil, and its destructive power is too strong, its growth will cause the destruction of everything else. Therefore, it is not tolerated by the other races in the universe and is seen as a public enemy." A few billion years ago, the ancient demon was completely destroyed by the experts of a higher civilization in a war. I've lived for so long, but I've never seen such a race. Chapter 395. Ding Ming pondered and said, "We can't fly out now, and we can't enter the endless forest either. I don't think there's a good way to go back to Health Town either." Fujimasa said, "But the Butcher's anti-reconnaissance system is pretty good. For the time being, we can hide at the border and be fine for a while. But if a large advanced starship comes, we'll have to find another place to hide." Ding Ming nodded. "In that case, everyone can rest on the Butcher for a while. I'll go back to Health Town and see if there's any good way to avoid the beast tide. No need." Junling suddenly interrupted him. "We can go to the shelter." "The shelter?" Ding Ming was curious. Junling said, "I know the place. It's on the sea. With this starship, we can go there." Planet Madison was like many other habitable planets. Land only took up a small part of the planet. The surface of the planet was mostly covered by the sea. Naturally, there were islands on the sea. The shelter Junling mentioned was on the island. The island was not small. It was like a green gem embedded in the middle of the sea. The original ecological environment here was obviously pure and natural. The blue sea water gently lapped at the golden beach. Surrounding the beach was a circle of coconut trees. Inside the island was a dense forest. This place was obviously the opposite of the endless forest. The endless forest was damp, gloomy, cold, lifeless, and drizzling. However, here, the sun was shining brightly and the greenery was upright. Everywhere was filled with vitality. One could even hear the chirping of insects and the snoring of various small beasts. A huge ancient tree in the middle of the island had merged with the surrounding vegetation. It was like an old man in his twilight years sitting on the ground. Although his body was a little bent, you could feel his kindness and gentleness. There were many dilapidated wooden castles built on the trunk of the tree. They were obviously used for living. But judging from the dilapidated state of the wood, this place had not been inhabited for many years. Seeing these wooden houses, Junling's tone was both proud and sad. I was born here. When I was 5 years old, I was sent to the prairie. This is my first time back. In fact, it was not only her. As soon as little Arrow, Junior Leopard, Elephant, and Chin Chin set foot on this land, they all cheered and ran around joyfully. Junior Leopard and Elephant were even rolling on the grass. It was obvious that they had a deep affection for this place. Returning to this place was like children returning to their home after a long time. Fujin Jun was puzzled. He was sent away at the age of 5, but you didn't have any means of transportation at that time. How did you land from such a long distance? Junling replied, all 5-year-old children will be forced to leave the shelter. There are only 2 ways to get there. One is to swim. Swim directly. Fujin Jun's electronic eyes flashed wildly. He was obviously shocked. Are you sure you're not messing with me? Healthtown's coastline is at least 1,000 kilometers from here. A 5-year-old child, even a child prodigy, would not be able to swim across. Little Arrow walked over. Mr. Feng, no one can swim across directly. But if you can tame the swordfish underwater, it will carry you across. Shuiyu Mountain's eyes flashed. The swordfish you're talking about. I'm afraid it won't be that easy to tame, right? Little Arrow was silent for a long time before he said, back then, we set out together. We took care of each other in the sea. In order to tame a swordfish, my only sister died in the sea. He did not sound sad. Instead, he sounded relieved. For people like them who fought, death was a common occurrence. As long as they did not die in the mouth of monsters, it was a blessing. Moreover, to sleep in this beautiful sea was a relief. It was also a blessed rest, so Little Arrow did not seem sad. However, Fujin Jun suddenly understood. For a group of children to travel from Shelter Island to the grassland, other than being good at swimming, they also had to be good at hunting. More importantly, they had to learn how to work together. If anyone wanted to be a hero alone, they would definitely not be able to cross. They could only drown in the sea. Perhaps for Junling and the others, the first lesson in their lives was to learn how to survive in the sea. It was the first time they faced the death of a comrade. Before this, they were all children and had their own happy childhood. But after this, they were adults. When they reached the other side, they were warriors. They had to pick up weapons and start fighting. From then on, they would face endless slaughter and painful deaths. They would live like this for the rest of their lives, Fujin Jun sighed. If the children of the Federal Empire had 1/10 of their understanding and ability, would there still be a swallowing frogman kingdom? It would have been destroyed long ago. Not even a trace of it is left. Shuiyu Mountain had always been too lazy to answer this kind of topic. He looked around. The scenery here is really good. I won't feel lonely even if I live here alone for a few decades. Fujin Jun sneered. Don't brag. If you really live here for a few decades, this place will be another swallowing world. The environment will be polluted like a cesspool. Shuiyu Mountain finally could not hold back. Little thing, since you know that I am from the swallowing world, can you give me some face? The 2 of them were mocking each other. Junling and the others were also scurrying into various houses. Only Ding Meng stood alone in front of the ancient tree, lost in thought. Xiao AI said, Ding Meng, I found that this tree is actually an energy carrier. It is constantly absorbing the origin energy around it. His telekinesis vision showed that the origin energy in the air was constantly entering the tree's surface. The tree was obviously an origin energy user. Moreover, with such a huge body, its absorption speed was much faster than an origin energy user's. Furthermore, at the core of the tree trunk, there was a 5-color divine stone that was flowing with brilliant light. It was emitting a peculiar fluctuation that was very gentle and warm, making people feel very comfortable, as if they were bathing in sunlight. Xiao AI was a little surprised. I can't even analyze the composition of this fluctuation. It seems to have the characteristics of origin energy, crystal energy, light energy, electricity, bioenergy, polymeric energy, and other energy. It even has a trace of Xinguang Technologies' aura. In addition, there are many other unknown characteristics. Ding Meng said, it's normal. It's very mysterious because I've seen this tree before. You've seen it before? Xiao AI was even more surprised. Ding Meng raised his head and silently looked at the ancient tree. His eyes were full of sincerity. Do you know its name? It is the Holy Tree. Xiao AI was shocked. Holy Tree? I remember you mentioning that in your hometown, the Shang Kingdom. This is the so-called Holy Tree? Ding Meng nodded slowly and firmly. Yes, I'm definitely not mistaken. I've seen the Holy Tree more than once. Although I wasn't an origin energy user at that time and couldn't sense its energy fluctuations, even an ordinary person would be able to sense the Holy Spirit's aura as soon as they got close to the Holy Tree. It was full of vitality, gentleness, joy, and holiness. Xiao AI said, so the stone inside is the Holy Spirit. Ding Meng said, I'm not sure. In any case, the Holy Spirits of the Shang Kingdom are not solid. This is obviously the divine stone that Ding Meng and the others mentioned. One thing I'm sure of is that the Holy Spirit and the divine stone are both energy, and they come from the same type of energy. Xiao AI also saw it through Ding Meng's vision. Although the ancient tree was absorbing origin energy, the surface of the tree was also feeding back bits and pieces of origin energy. This origin energy was different from the origin energy in the air. It seemed to have been emitted after being transformed by the ancient tree and spontaneously searched for a target. The target was naturally Junling and the others. After the transformation, the origin energy automatically attached itself to their skin and then entered their bodies. These people were completely unaware. Xiao AI seemed to have realized something. So this is the reason why their physical fitness is so excellent. They have been receiving the nourishment of origin energy since they were young. This holy tree is really godly. If they had the sensor cabin, they would have been able to do twice the work with half the effort. Ding Meng said quietly, the holy tree's miraculous effects are far more than that. When I was an ordinary person, I would run to the area covered by the holy tree to rest when I was injured or infected with the plague. After a few days, I would naturally recover. Xiao AI was silent. If this thing was found by those so-called devouring monsters, the consequences would be unimaginable. No wonder there are tens of thousands of monsters in the endless forest. It seems that the holy tree can nourish all living things. Ding Meng said, actually, the holy tree also has a shielding ability. I heard from Big Sister that in our Shang Kingdom, no matter how powerful an origin energy user is, if they want to use origin energy perception, it is very difficult to find the holy tree. They can only use the most natural senses of an ordinary person to search for it, or use their naked eyes to search for it. From a certain perspective, the holy tree also has the ability to protect itself. Xiao AI immediately left Ding Meng's telekinesis vision and used Ding Meng's origin energy to detect it again. She found that it was just as Ding Meng had said. The tree in front of them seemed ordinary and nothing special. If that's the case, we are still relatively safe for the time being. Xiao AI analyzed. Ding Meng shook his head and said, not necessarily. The monsters in the endless forest are not afraid of water. According to what Junling said, once the beast tide breaks out and Health Town falls, the endless forest will expand to the coastline. The monsters can also enter the sea, and sooner or later, they will come to this place. Xiao AI said, then what should we do? Ding Meng sighed. Let Junling and the others use the induction cabin to cultivate their martial arts techniques first. With their aptitude, their progress should be very fast. When the time comes, they will be able to resist for as long as they can. If they really can't resist, we can only force ourselves to take off and try our luck in space again. Xiao AI also sighed, which was rare. I don't think that you will be as lucky as last time if you drift in the depths of space again. Ding Meng turned around and said, let's get on the ship and organize the resources on the butcher. It will be best if there are some special things that we can use as much as possible. Chapter 396. The butcher really did not have any special resources. It was just a normal transport starship. It was slightly bigger than the average transport starship. It had enough silver core stones, but to rely on its weak weapons system to travel through space. Just as Makoto Fujin had said, it was unrealistic to fly to the divinity's battlefield. Although Ding Meng and the others were worried, Jun Ling and the others were happier. This group of people had used the sensor cabin for the first time, and it had stunned Masafuma and Shuiyu Mountain. Especially Little Arrow, Elephant, and Junior Leopard. They had almost instantly mastered the most basic heat source technique, tenacity technique, imperial wind technique, and other cultivation techniques. After learning the basic cultivation techniques, it was naturally time to learn the martial techniques. Sacred Yang Tiger Palm, Source Body Fission, and Transient Step martial techniques were very easy for them to grasp. After all, these people were all experts who had experienced hundreds of battles. They didn't need Masa Fujin's detailed explanation at all. What's more, Masafuma had been a talented master when he was alive. He was very familiar with teaching them. Junior Leopard even wanted to take Masafuma as his master, but he was dissuaded by Elephant. After all, Ding Meng had said in advance that they weren't allowed to be master and disciple. Although this group of people was obsessed with martial arts, they weren't blind. Everyone could see that even Masafuma and Shuiyu Mountain followed Ding Meng's lead. One could imagine how powerful Ding Meng was. The days on the island were very peaceful. Everyone was working hard to cultivate. In a flash, 20 days had passed. During this period, Jun Ling would go to the beach alone every evening to look into the distance. She had no other purpose other than to use the changes in the weather to determine the time of the beast tide. In fact, Ding Meng had also noticed that although the sunset these days was picturesque, when the sun set, more and more dark clouds gradually appeared on the surface of the sea, and they became denser and denser. The astronomical changes caused by the endless forest were gradually expanding. Jun Ling walked barefoot on the beach. Waves covered her ankles, but she didn't look happy. She seemed to have a lot on her mind. Still thinking about the beast tide, Ding Meng walked up to him, and the two of them walked side by side. Jun Ling looked at the fiery red setting sun. There are at most 30 days left. Her tone was gloomy. If the monster horde really came 30 days later, there would only be two outcomes. One was to rush into the monster horde and fight to the death. The other was to stay on this island and wait for death. Ding Meng said, "I can take you with me." Jun Ling sighed. "My ancestors have been guarding this land for generations. No one has ever been a deserter. I didn't expect that in my generation, we might have to break the precedent." Ding Meng also sighed. "It's not your fault. There are only about 10 of you left in your clan." Jun Ling understood what he meant. No matter what, whether it was fighting or fleeing, they had to protect the people of their clan. Once the last 13 people all died in battle, it would be a true extinction. Ding Meng said, "What about your parents?" Jun Ling shook her head. "I haven't seen my father. I was born here. He should be on the other side of the grassland. By the time I get there, he might have died in battle. My mother is said to have died immediately after giving birth to me." Ding Meng frowned. "How could this be?" Jun Ling said, "Our clan is different from yours. Once a woman has a child in her stomach, her combat power will quickly degrade. The child will absorb her ability so that the bloodline will be stronger after birth. But I heard from Yang Wei that you call this gene." Ding Meng nodded. "There is indeed such a saying." Jun Ling said, "After the child is born, the mother's power will be exhausted and she will die easily." Ding Meng was silent. "So the women of your clan are not willing to have children?" Jun Ling said, "That's not the case either. To plant a child in a woman's belly, the strong must have the final say. For example, I'm the strongest in our group. I'll choose who I want to have a child with. If someone is stronger than me and chooses me, I'll have to cooperate." Ding Meng smiled bitterly. "Your rules are really strange." Jun Ling said, "What's so strange about it? Everything is for the next generation to become stronger so that the next generation can fight better and protect our land." Ding Meng was silent. "This land is about to be lost, and you don't seem to have a next generation." Jun Ling seemed to know what he was thinking and took the initiative to explain. "Actually, I want to have a child with Little Arrow. Unfortunately, he is not as strong as me. I can't take this risk. Elephant also hopes that I can have child for him, but I am not willing. Ding Meng said, You don't have feelings for them? Junling shook his head and said, I don't know what feelings are. It's only in recent years that I have come into contact with outsiders like Professor that I know this is called love. Unfortunately, I don't know either. If I have to choose, I will choose you. Ding Meng was stunned. Why? I'm not a member of your clan. I know. Junling sighed. I can see that you, Mr. Feng, and Elder Shui came from a very distant world. You didn't come from the realm of gods, but you came at this critical moment. I've been thinking these days that this might be a turning point. You're stronger than all of us combined. If my child has your bloodline, it might be able to change the situation in front of us in the future. You think too much, Ding Meng replied indifferently. Sometimes, it is not necessarily strength that can change the situation in the war. We have not figured out what the situation in front of us is. Including your seniors, no one has figured out the real situation on Madison for many years. Junling's expression immediately became cold and stern. What? You don't want to have a child with me? I'm not afraid of death. Are you afraid? Or do you despise me? Ding Meng also knew this girl's one-track mind. He could not refute her. He could only spread his hands and smile bitterly. Even if I want to have a child with you, I am afraid it is too late. The beast tide is coming. Junling also lowered his head in silence. The current situation made everyone unable to see the slightest bit of hope. Maybe flying into space is the only hope. Junling looked up and sighed. At this moment, Ding Meng's wristwatch vibrated and the screen popped up. Makoto Fujin's tone was very worried. Ding Meng, come on board quickly. There is a new situation. Seeing his serious expression, Ding Meng also knew that the situation was not small. If it could alarm Makoto Fujin, then it could not be anything good. The main control console of the Butcher's Command Hall had many screens. The reconnaissance radar had been turned on, and they could clearly see the depths of space. 3 starships were lined up in a row and flying at the same speed in the darkness. The 3 starships looked exactly the same. The ship's hull was straight and square, and the bridge was at the front of the ship. The entire ship was thick and heavy, and at the rear were 4 giant ion thrusters that were spewing out crystal flames. There did not seem to be any markings on the starships. Since they were discovered by the Butcher's radar, it proved that the 3 starships were in the Welcome Star system. Makoto Fujin had already marked out the starship's flight path on the screen. If I am not wrong, they are coming from Madison. Ding Meng asked, What starship is this? Makoto Fujin said, According to the Federation standards, this is a medium-sized starship, and its standard is far inferior to the Federation's. It should be an interceptor. Ding Meng stared at the screen and said, If this is the reinforcements that Ing Chunli and his band of pirates brought over, then we have hope. There is no need for Makoto Fujin to guess anymore. The 3 starships had already passed through the atmosphere and appeared in the night sky. From afar, 3 blue dots were emitting a rumbling sound as they descended, dragging long tails behind them as they landed in the distance. Their approximate location was in the direction of Healthtown. I will go over first. You guys follow me, Ding Meng said as he turned around and rushed out. With the propulsion system of the Rainbow Backpack, flying over a distance of 1,000 kilometers was child's play. However, to be on the safe side, Ding Meng still glided across the sea at an extremely slow speed. If he moved too fast, he would be easily identified by the enemy's radar. This was not a seagull, but a human. Healthtown was still the same. It was very peaceful. The 3 interceptor ships were parked on the grassland in the distance, but a transport ship had already landed on the platform of the lighthouse. It looked like the people on the starships were coming for Yongwei. Ding Meng landed at noon the next day. He did not go directly to the lighthouse. With his strength, every corner of Healthtown could not hide from his eyes. The Ground Research Institute was very lively today. Almost everyone was gathered there. It looked like everyone was equipped with the bone armor made by Professor Zhangkong. Moreover, these people were pouring bags of monster bones and organs on the ground. Ding Meng could not help but say, Looks like everyone has been having a good harvest recently. Seeing that it was him, Hongda, who was in the crowd, could not help but mock him. Isn't this brother Foam? Why are you the only one here? Where are your teammates? Naturally, he was referring to Junling and the others. Ding Ming could not help but laugh. Seems like they got separated. Separated? Hong Da's eyes flashed with joy. Ding Ming, Junling, and the others were separated. If Ding Ming could come back, it meant that Junling and the others were still in the forest. Perhaps they were already dead in there. They have been missing for more than 10 days, Ding Ming replied calmly. Why? You seem to have a problem with them? Hongda snorted. She got off easy. Easy? Ding Ming did not understand. Hongda looked around and whispered, You still don't know, right? Professor Yang will reward anyone who can send June to the top of the lighthouse. Oh, Ding Ming was surprised. What kind of reward? Hongda said, Do you see the starship over there? It only comes once a year to pick up people and leave Madison. Only those who have made contributions to the town can leave. The candidates are personally appointed by the 2 professors. Ding Ming could not help but frown. What did this mean? Chapter 397. In fact, Ding Ming had been curious about this strange health town ever since he arrived on planet McGrady. Why was this town built? What was the purpose of this town? Yang Wei and Zheng Kong had stayed in this town for more than 20 years. Or they were searching. At this moment, Yang Wei's figure finally appeared in the hall of the Research Institute. In addition to Yang Wei, who was in a suit, there was a man and a woman standing next to him. They were both able-bodied origin ability users, and they were definitely unfamiliar faces. They might have come down from the 3-star ships. Behind Yang Wei was a group of strong people. Many of them were the disabled people that Ding Ming had seen on the butcher. However, they were no longer disabled. Their limbs were as good as new, and there was no difference at all. Ding Ming was curious. Did Yang Wei really repair them? Xiao AI said, No, they're not normal. Ding Ming sensed a little. These people's limbs were indeed the same as before, as if they had been reborn after using the medical pod. However, the aura of these people was very different. They had something in common with Junling's group, and that was that each of them exuded a fierce, and ruthless killing intent. The difference was that although Junling's group was fierce, they exuded a trace of primitive and wild vitality. However, this group of people did not have any vitality on them, and they were living people. Ding Ming concluded that there must be something wrong with this. At this time, Yang Wei elegantly walked to the workbench and knocked on the table. Old Zheng, the fleet of the Golden Shield Alliance is here. They're picking up another batch of people this year. This time, there are 1,500 people. You decide how to split the quota between our 2 families. This was what the people living in Health Town were most concerned about. So when he said this, everyone fell silent and looked at the workbench anxiously. Zheng Kong put down his work and looked up at the man and woman. Old Du is the one picking them up every year. Why is it different this year? And they're so young? This implied that he did not trust these 2 young people. Although they were called young, they were not young at all. The man was about 60 years old, and the woman looked about 45 years old. Both of them were wearing uniforms unique to the starship. There was a golden shield symbol on their chests, which was probably the symbol of their sect. The beautiful woman took 2 steps forward with a smile. Professor Zheng, my name is Zheng Jia. I'm the first officer of the fleet. The man beside me is Ming Bang. He's the vice captain of the fleet. We're here on orders. The Alliance hopes to send back a group of people who have been rescued. Sun Kong looked at her again and said unhurriedly, You could just go back. Why are you looking for me? Ming Bang also stepped forward and said, Professor, according to the rules, the candidates will be recommended by you and Professor Yang. Zheng Kong smiled disdainfully. I believe that both of you have seen it. The people who received help from me were all disabled people with prosthetics. The disabled people who were repaired by Professor Yang are now normal people. If they're to be repatriated, they will prioritize the repatriation of normal people who can fight. Professor Yang can make the decision on this kind of matter. There is no need to ask for my opinion. Cough, cough. Yang Wei coughed twice. Old Zeng, we've lived here for more than 20 years. Although there are some small conflicts between us, there are no big conflicts. Zeng Kang's eyelids drooped, and he did not answer. Yang Wei said, I can understand your good intentions, but you should also know that the endless forest has been expanding over the years. The people who have the real combat power are always the people from Lighthouse. Even so, the casualties are still high. The bone armor and bone spurs that you developed can obviously reduce the casualties. Why don't you share it? Isn't the purpose of you installing prosthetics for everyone to become normal people? His words were reasonable, but Ding Ming could tell that Yang Wei was very envious of Zeng Kang's bone armor manufacturing technology. That was his purpose for coming down from Lighthouse. Yang Wei continued, the annual big hunt is about to begin. Old Zeng, to be honest, I don't want the casualties to be too high. Let's cooperate. What do you think? 1,500 people. You have the priority to finalize the list of the first 1,000 people. What do you think? Zeng Kang could not help but say, 1,000 people? Is human life worthless? Or is my technology worthless? You want to send me away with 1,000 people? Yang Wei's expression changed. Don't tell me you want all the people. Zeng Kang said, I'm not that arrogant. Don't even think about the bone armor technology. It's more suitable for those who need it. If you really learn it, how can the people above ground survive? Yang Wei was about to persuade him again, but he was stopped by Ming Bang. Ming Bang cupped his hands slightly at Zeng Kang. Professor, we can only come once a year. I hope you can consider the big picture. Zeng Kang replied calmly, all right, then we'll follow the old rules. Go into the mountains to hunt. Those who collect the most materials have the most glorious results, and come back alive will have the priority to board the ship and be repatriated. This is the fairest way. What does the big hunt mean? Ding Ming asked Mei Ling this time. Mei Ling whispered, every year at this time, people will be mobilized to hunt monsters in the endless forest. Those who have excellent results and come back safely will be the priority to be repatriated. However, the locals are not eligible to participate. The locals were naturally referring to Jun Ling and the others. Ding Ming still did not understand. Why can't the locals? Mei Ling said helplessly. Sister Jun Ling and Professor Yang have had many conflicts. Moreover, Jun Ling and the others have always only dealt with Professor Zeng. The bones they hunt are usually sent here, so everyone is very unhappy. Professor Yang's research field is to conduct experiments on the locals. Ding Ming said in a low voice, what exactly is he researching? Mei Ling whispered, he's researching in the field of genetics. Xiao AI suddenly said, it's very likely to be genetic modification. Her words immediately woke Ding Ming up. Previously, when they landed on Madison, Zeng Kang had said, those who are able-bodied can come to me and follow that Yang guy. If you fail in his experiments, you'll be disposed of like trash. The Federal Empire had long mastered the technology of genetic modification, but the topic of genetic modification had always been controversial. First of all, no one could deny the power of this technology. Secondly, the reason why it was controversial was because of the uncertainty. If a human's genes were modified, it would be fine if it was benign, but if it was malignant, it would lead to countless serious consequences. A typical example would be the development of 2 or even more races. In the higher academic circles of the Holy Grail Federation, there was even a speculation that the Devourer world was a new race that had appeared after genetic modification failed. Therefore, the Federal Empire had extremely strict control over genetic modification. The targets of modification were usually the remnants of soldiers on the battlefield who were almost nothing more than spirit bodies. They were implanted with biological and mechanical technology to modify them into half-human, half-metal, reborn soldiers. These reborn people were not allowed to have the right to reproduce, and all their actions had to be under the command of the military. Based on Ding Ming's current knowledge of the divine battlefield, he judged that the genetic modification technology here was not as advanced as the Holy Grail Federation's. It probably had not even formed a specialized system. It was not difficult to explain why Yang Wei had come to such a remote planet to research this. This guy's technology was probably not mature enough, so he used these disabled people as experimental subjects. As for why he had put a bounty on Junling and the others, it was nothing more than the powerful combat genes of the local race on Madison. No wonder Junling had a preliminary understanding of the terms bloodline and genes. It was obvious that he had learned about them from his dealings with Yang Wei. Of course, no matter how limited Junling and the others' knowledge was, they should at least know that they could not be used as experimental subjects. Will they be sent to? Ding Meng asked calmly. Mei Ling immediately showed a yearning expression. Near the divine battlefield starfield. If they are lucky, they can enter the divine battlefield starfield. My wish is to go to the divine battlefield starfield. After asking for more detailed information about the big hunt, Ding Ming quietly retreated to the side. At present, it seemed that the entire health town had a population of around 80,000. Excluding the young children and artificial bodies like Mei Ling, there were close to 60,000 origin ability users with combat ability. If these 60,000 origin ability users worked together to sweep through the forest of infinity, they would be able to put up a fight against the monster army. Ding Meng spread out his telekinesis vision and carefully scanned the area for a while. He immediately had a new understanding of the fleet sent by the Golden Shield Alliance. The 3-star ship's firepower was not weak. They were equipped with cannons, energy cluster cannons, particle laser cannons, interception pulse matrices, and other weapon systems. The 3-star ships carried a total of 4,000 people, all of whom were at least at the warrior level. Bang and Xingjia in front of him should be at the warrior level. Through various signals and origin ability fluctuations, Ding Meng sensed that there were experts above the warrior level on the starships. According to the database, the Golden Shield Alliance was not a mainstream sect in the Divine Battlefield Starfield. He did not expect that they could casually send out such an armed force. They really could not be underestimated. Of course, these could all be used. Right now, it would be best if he could sneak onto the starships. Just as Ding Meng was about to sneak out to contact Makoto Fuma, Mei Ling called out to him, "Oh right, the professor has already repaired your combat suit. He wants you to go to the workshop to retrieve it." Oh, Ding Meng was a little surprised. Didn't he say that I have to get the bones for the professor to repair it? Actually, there was no other way. When Ding Meng and the others retreated in the forest, the attack of the Godslayer's pulse gun and energy bomb had blown the Devourer into ashes. There was no way Ding Meng could bring the ashes back, right? Mei Ling smiled. The Great Hunt is about to begin in 2 days. You don't have to worry about the materials. If you're lucky, you can just bring back some skeletons and hand them over here. The professor repaired your battle suit for your safety. Is that so? Ding Meng was a little embarrassed. Then, thank you in advance. Chapter 398. The workshop wasn't any smaller than the hall outside, and the furnishings were more or less the same. There were all sorts of oddly shaped skeletal samples, but Ding Meng still saw the energy control panel at the innermost corner. The blue screen had already risen, displaying the various data diagrams of the prototype, as well as a new concept map. In fact, the prototype had not changed much. From the outside, it still looked like a single black-armored warrior. Sun Kong placed a metal box on the table and pushed it to Ding Meng. I've already repaired your suit. The data doesn't mean anything. You'll only know the effect after you put it on. Ding Meng hurriedly opened the box. After he put it on, the system's voice rang out. Welcome to the prototype. The system is now generating the operating program for you. The control panel on the mask did not change much. It was still the same as before, but there was a slight change. Ding Meng could smell an indescribable stench coming from within the prototype. His tolerance was already quite good, but this stench still made him want to vomit. Why is it so smelly? Ding Meng frowned. Sun Kong adjusted the screen and answered unhurriedly. Forgive me for being blunt. Your suit looks simple, but its operating principle is extremely complicated. I'm very sorry. Even with my skills, I can't restore it to a 100% state. I can only repair it as much as I can based on the principles. First, from the degree of damage, you must have gone through a very difficult battle. Your psionic energy conversion almost exceeded its capacity. In other words, you damaged it yourself. As he said this, he gave Ding Meng a meaningful look. Ding Meng replied in a low voice, "Yes, I did use it to its limit." Sun Kong continued, "Secondly, the defense of this suit is very good. I found that the material used to fuse it is also an unknown biological fiber. The main damage part is this fiber, so I used the bone armor to add the bone material. In terms of defense, the defense of the suit has been raised to a new level." Ding Meng asked, "You're saying that the toughness of the suit has increased?" Sun Kong said, "Against psionicists, devouring monsters, and genetic warriors, the armor's defensive capabilities have improved, but against technological energy sources, its defensive capabilities have decreased. Do you understand what I mean?" Ding Meng naturally understood that this meant that the prototype's defense against technological weapons had dropped. Zhang Kong added, "Because of the addition of skeletons, which are taken from the endless forest, and there is no highly industrialized processing equipment here, you will inevitably smell the stench. But don't worry, in the endless forest, this stench is only good for you. Once you get used to it, you will be fine." Ding Meng said, "Thank you, Professor Zhang." Zhang Kong continued, "Because it hasn't been completely restored, some of its functions have been limited. Please understand." Xiao AI explained, "After my tests, I discovered that this prototype can no longer use extreme mode. It only has 3 modes left: easy, hard, and hell. This isn't good news for you." Ding Meng nodded. "Still, thank you, Professor Zhang." Zhang Kong said, "Don't be in such a hurry to thank me. The annual Great Hunt is about to begin. I believe you know this by now. The endless forest is getting bigger and bigger, and the monsters are getting more and more numerous. This year will be the year when the population of Healthtown is the highest. I hope that the expansion of the monsters will be effectively contained." Ding Meng frowned. "Has it not been contained in the past?" Zhang Kong shook his head helplessly. "In the past, Yang and my technology was not mature enough, but this year is different. Our respective technology should have taken shape. This year is the year with the most hope. I don't have much hope for the others, but I have high hopes for you." "Oh." Ding Meng immediately raised his guard. Zhang Kang's words and actions were always calm and indifferent, but Ding Meng had a feeling that this person was not as simple as he seemed. "Professor, you have so much confidence in me, an outsider who has only been here for less than a month?" Sun Kong looked at him silently and said word by word, "I'm not interested in knowing where you came from. I only know that you and your 2 followers don't belong to this place, so you should leave, but not now." Ding Meng's eyes flashed. "When should I leave?" Zhang Kong said, "After the Great Hunt is over, I will be the first to recommend you return. The realm of gods is where you should go. It is not suitable for you to stay on Madison." He paused and finally said something shocking. "And it is even more inappropriate for you to stay on the Butcher." Sure enough, Zhang Kong did not hide the fact that he killed Ying Chungli's group. It was just like the Black Gold base. If you wanted to mingle in the mines, you could not hide it from Machine Gun and the General. Similarly, if you wanted to cause trouble in Healthtown, others might not know, but Yang Wei and Zhang Kong would definitely know. These 2 people were actually the controllers of Healthtown. Ding Meng pondered and said, "Professor, you don't want me to get too close to the locals?" Zhang Kong said, "That is one of the reasons. There is another thing you don't know. Although the Butcher is a pirate ship, it is also under the command of the Golden Shield Alliance. I don't know what you plan to do, but the Butcher is now nowhere to be seen and has not taken off. You have undoubtedly cut off their source of income. You just saw that the captain of the ship has changed. I'm telling you this for your own good." Ding Meng lowered his head and pondered for a long time before he said, "Professor, what do you want me to do?" A hint of surprise flashed across Zhang Kang's face. He did not expect Ding Meng to be so quick-witted, so he said calmly, "I want you to find the leader." Ding Meng curiously asked, "Leader? What leader?" Zhang Kong said, "In the core of the endless forest, the leader of the Devourers. Ding Ming asked calmly. What exactly is this leader? Zheng Kong did not answer him directly this time. Instead, he slowly paced back and forth in the room as if he was thinking about something. After a long time, he said, I've been doing research here for more than 20 years. When I first came here, the Devourers were not as strong as they are now. But today, they are far beyond what humans can compete with. In my research, the body structure and bone material of the leader of these monsters must be a new generation of practical materials. I have always believed that biological technology is ahead of mechanical technology, Ding Ming thought to himself. So this is your real purpose for staying in this broken place for 20 years. Zheng Kong said, if you let Yang find the leader first, and the 3 starships of the Golden Shield Alliance launch an attack, everything will be annihilated. Then, there will be nothing left for me to do research. Ding Ming said, you want the leader's skeleton? Zheng Kong said, I'm not asking you to hunt down the leader. I don't think you can. As long as you can bring back some of the remains, I can analyze the composition and improve your battle suits, including the one you're wearing. I'm confident that I can improve it to an unprecedented level. Ding Ming pondered and said, okay. After leaving the research institute, Ding Ming immediately rushed to the seaside to meet up with Ding Ming and the others. Xiao AI cannot help but ask, you believe what that guy said? Ding Ming said, he shouldn't be lying, but I keep feeling that something is wrong. Xiao AI said, you didn't ask where the leader is, and he didn't say the exact location of the leader, but he seems to be sure that you can find it. Ding Ming sneered. He didn't think that I can find it. He thought that Ding Ming and the others must know the exact location. There must be something to it. Xiao AI sighed. Alas, it's a pity that Little Rascal isn't here. Little Rascal's Level 1 authority had the ability to detect lies. All along, Ding Ming's opponents had relied on Little Rascal and Ding Ming's logical reasoning to determine if they were lying. However, Xiao AI did not have this ability. It was hard to judge whether Zheng Kang's words were trustworthy or not. This time, not everyone in Junling's group set off. Only Junling, Elephant, Little Arrow, Junior Leopard, and Qin rode the swordfish across the sea. After all, the 6 of them were relatively strong. The other 6 stayed on the island with Fujin Jun on Shuiyu Mountain. The butcher could not be exposed now. Moreover, Junling had also prepared for the worst. If the 6 of them died in battle, the remaining 6 could ensure that their race would not be completely wiped out. However, after listening to Ding Ming's explanation, Junling's expression became unnatural. The core position that Professor Zheng mentioned can't possibly have the leader. Ding Ming frowned. Why? Little Arrow walked up and explained, a long time ago, even before the devouring monster, there was a forbidden area in the deepest part of the prairie. No one could enter. Ding Ming curiously asked, what kind of forbidden area? Little Arrow explained, it's called the Forbidden Area. We have never seen it before. My grandfather once said that anyone who entered the Forbidden Area, regardless of whether they were human or animal, never came out. As for what it was like inside, no one really knows. Our ancestors believed that the Forbidden Area should be a place where the gods existed. Mortals should not disturb it. Ding Ming did not think that this saying was ignorant. Humans were always full of curiosity and reverence towards the unknown. Therefore, they were used to explaining it in terms of gods and ghosts. For example, in ancient times, if you let an uncivilized person see the Holy Grail Federation, he would probably think that this was the world of the gods. Ding Ming said, you should know the route to the Forbidden Area, right? Junling said, I only know the approximate route. I might not be able to find the exact location. Ding Ming said, the big hunt is about to begin. I've calculated that about 60,000 psionicists have entered the Endless Forest. There are also 3 starships from the Golden Shield Alliance. Can this force reach the Forbidden Area? Junling pondered and said, it's hard to say. However, I don't think that any starship can really enter the core area. There are too many strange phenomena in the depths of the Endless Forest. Even experts from the realm of gods may not be able to explain it clearly. Chapter 399. It was still a sunny day, and the grassland looked as beautiful as the ocean under the sun. The wind swept through the green grass wave after wave. The 60,000 people gathered in Healthtown spread out in a straight line on the grassland. However, everyone knew that they were in small groups of 3 to 5. For example, Hongda's group was gathered in a single group. More than half of the 60,000 people were able-bodied origin ability users from Lighthouse. Only less than 10,000 people had bone prosthetics. These people were all equipped with prosthetics and were equipped with the mummy bone armor made by Professors in Kong. They stood at the flank of the main group like wooden dummies. The big hunt started today and lasted for 2 months. Within these 2 months, the standard to judge a returee was the skeleton trophies. The higher the quality and rarer the material, the higher the chance of being recommended by the 2 professors. The grassland was also densely packed with people. Everyone was using cold weapons. Most of them were swords, alloy sticks, and spears. However, their overall speed was very slow. Anyone who had some experience in Healthtown knew how terrifying the Forest of Infinity was. No matter how much they wanted to return, it was not as important as their own lives. Ding Meng and his group were hiding at the back of the main group. Although Ding Meng was more familiar with the route of the Endless Forest than anyone else, her thoughts were the same as Ding Meng's. Those who were willing to take the lead should go ahead and fight. If they encountered an army of monsters, they should not complain that the enemy was outnumbered. Lu Cheng, who they met on Starship Butcher, also came over to Ding Meng's side. Brother Feng. Ding Meng noticed that Lu Cheng's bone prosthetics had been installed. He did not have any difficulty walking and was not much different from a normal person. Everyone followed the main group and slowly walked forward. Where's Betty? Ding Meng was still more concerned about children. She's fine. Lu Cheng smiled. She's already adapted to the environment in Healthtown. Ding Meng said, Right. I remember you mentioned the arena to me before. What's that place? Lu Cheng sighed. Actually, my leg was broken in the arena. Ding Meng asked, What's going on? In his mind, the so-called arena should be the same as the Federal Empire's martial arts dojos, cultivation dojos, martial arts teaching halls, martial arts practice halls, and martial arts training squares. They were all used for people to cultivate. At most, they were used for exchanging pointers. Very few people were beaten to the point of losing an arm or a leg in these places. Generally speaking, a competition of this level was a life-and-death struggle. Lu Cheng explained, It's all because of the God War Alliance. Now, the God War Star Ring is reducing the population and opening up the quota. Ordinary people are not allowed to enter. Only those who are qualified can enter. Ding Meng thought to himself, Isn't this the same as the Holy Grail Federation? Do I have to be a citizen to enter? How do I qualify? Junling was most concerned about this question. There is only one criterion for the God War Star Ring to open the God War Star Ring to outsiders, and that was that you had to be useful to the God War Star Ring and not be a waste of resources. Thus, the God War Star Ring regularly held all kinds of conventions. The typical one was the psionic martial arts competition. Those who obtained an outstanding ranking would be qualified to enter. However, this kind of convention was relatively high-end. It was very difficult for ordinary people to obtain a ranking. At the very least, origin ability users below the war venerable level could forget about it. Those who participate in the psionic martial art competition are all famous people or rising stars of some sect in the past 1 or 2 years. People like me definitely have no hope. Lu Cheng explained, However, there are other competitions as well. That depends on luck. For example, the God War Star Ring holds a food festival. If your dishes are truly delicious, you might be recruited by some sect. Hearing this, the elephant couldn't help but reveal a silly smile. Ding Meng curiously asked, Could it be that the elephant is also a chef? He's not a chef. Junling replied expressionlessly. He's best at eating raw meat. Ding Meng was speechless. Is there no other way to qualify? Lu Cheng said, Then there's only the arena. The so-called arena was not a true martial arts hall. It was an underground fighting arena, which could not see the light of day. This was because not everyone in Star Ring was a psionicist. There were also many ordinary people. Some of them lived in a relatively peaceful environment and were very curious about Sionis' battles. Thus, the arena was born. The rich could go to the arena to watch the battles and place heavy bets in order to seek excitement. The contestants, on the other hand, could advance level by level through challenges. The battles in the arena were not some kind of friendly competition, but real life and death battles. After all, life outside Star Ring was already very difficult. In order to enter Star Ring, not only would everyone go all out, but they would also show no mercy. Being beaten to a pulp was a common occurrence, and it was not uncommon for people to lose their lives. Yes, that's it. Junling obviously approved of this method. Only the strong can enjoy a better environment. Ding Ming was speechless again. Doesn't the League of Gods restrict these arenas? Lu Cheng said, there's no way to restrict them. There are too many arenas outside Star Ring, and they have to hold competitions basically every day. How many official meetings of the League of Gods can be held in a year? Besides, once you win a lot of matches in the arena and make a name for yourself, there will be sects in the realm of gods that will recruit you. There are also official team and sect competitions in Star Ring. Ding Ming thought to himself, isn't this the same as the Star Wars League in the Federal Empire? Lu Cheng said, it's just that I was unlucky. I had a chance to win 5 matches in a row, but I met a strong guy in the last match. Fortunately, I only broke a leg. Ding Ming said, is that how the disabled people in Health Town came to be? Lu Cheng nodded and said, most of them. I've known about Hong since 2 years ago. He's pretty strong and won 12 matches in a row. He was supposed to win the last match for sure, but he was ambushed on the way to the competition, which caused his strength to decrease. In the end, his arm was cut off, and he ended up here. Ding Ming immediately understood the necessity of Planet McGrady's existence. There's a reason why these disabled people chose to come here. After they were equipped with artificial limbs, they would inevitably have to fight monsters to improve themselves. If they survived, they would definitely return to the arena. At that time, if they won a lot of matches in a row, the first thing they would do after entering Star Ring was to use the medical pod to completely recover and live a new life in Star Ring. Lu Cheng's eyes were a little red. Betty's mother was an ordinary person. She passed away because she couldn't be treated in the medical pod. Ding Ming patted his shoulder. It's okay. If you survive this time, you will definitely enter Star Ring. Lu Cheng nodded. Then I'll count on Brother Feng's blessing. While they were talking, the group had already crossed the border of the grasslands and entered the endless forest. The sky immediately darkened, and the temperature began to drop. Ding Ming's guess was right. This was the eve of the beast tide. They had not even entered the outer area, but groups of devourer monsters had already appeared in the forest. This scale was definitely not comparable to the monster army from before, but for every 400 to 500 meters, there were still 70 to 80 monsters shuttling through the forest. Ding Ming's telekinesis vision was at the forefront of the main force, so naturally, she was able to observe the battle on the front line very clearly. The origin ability users on the lighthouse were all burly and fierce. Facing the monsters, these people were not afraid at all. They directly faced the monsters head-on, and their fighting style could be described as barbaric. 2 or 3 burly men's movements were vigorous. They grabbed the limbs of the devouring monsters and pulled them, tearing the devouring monsters alive until only their bodies were left. The burly men who followed behind them held sharp alloy spears and stabbed the devouring monsters crazily. It was as if they had a deep hatred for the monsters, stabbing the monsters until they were beyond recognition, and their flesh was badly mutilated. Above this group of people, countless flying spears and spears flew forward like rain. A large number of the monsters that rushed up from the forest immediately fell down. The other groups rushed up and did the same. They tore, slashed, stabbed, and stomped on the monsters. Some of the burly men even tore the monsters apart with their bare hands. After tearing the monsters in half, they did not care about the green mucus and reached out to pull out the devourer monster's heart. It was not only the men who did this. Some of the burly women seemed to be very hungry. They even picked up the mangled bodies on the ground and ate them directly. There were even some who held their spears and roared, "Crush these bastards!" This scene gave people the impression that the Devour monsters were like weak humans, while the Origin ability users were more like monsters. They killed and crushed the monsters like a flood. In just 10 minutes or so, they had advanced a distance of 1,000 meters. Xiao AI opened her mouth and said, "This situation doesn't seem right." Ding Meng nodded with a solemn expression. He knew Xiao AI's worries. These warriors from the lighthouse were not like normal humans at all. They were more like crazy beasts. It was said that humans had murderous intent, but a single person's murderous intent would at most be sharp and threatening. However, with so many beasts slaughtering, the forest was filled with a crazy, angry, bloodthirsty, and destructive aura. Even Ding Meng felt restless and restless. This principle was the same as an army charging and breaking through enemy lines. When everyone's blood was boiling, they would naturally be filled with courage. When everyone was afraid and retreating, their hands and feet would definitely turn cold. Collective emotions were very contagious. Ding Meng took a deep breath and circulated his origin energy slightly to suppress the restlessness in his body. They had not encountered the main force of the monsters yet, so it was best to wait and see. The artificial body team on the ground was obviously encouraged by this murderous aura. Someone was already raising his arms and shouting, "Everyone, let's go." The people from the lighthouse usually think that we're trash. Let's show them that we're not bad either. Let's go together. Elephant picked up his bone spike aerial gun and was about to charge forward when Junling suddenly pulled him back. Elephant looked back in confusion. "What's wrong?" Junling's expression was very calm. She stared into the depths of the forest. "Don't follow them. I only just found out that Professor Yang has turned them into something else. They're no longer human." Chapter 400. The charge of the artificial body team was definitely not as fierce as the beast team, but their killing efficiency in the forest was not low at all. Ding Meng had only just figured out the benefits of these bone armors. Almost all the devouring monsters seemed to slow down when they saw the origin ability users equipped with bone armors. They waved their claws at the other party, but the special flexible material of the bone armors immediately reflected the attack. The monsters were still in a daze, but the person who was attacked was suddenly served with a flurry of knives and spears. Xiao AI said decisively, "These skeletons don't just emit a stench. They also have a strange rhythm. It gives the monsters an illusion that these people are their own kind, so their reactions and movements are slowed down." Ding Meng nodded. He had already seen that Hong Da's group's killing speed was not slower than the people on the front line. In a few minutes, the forest was full of corpses. Those who only had their heads and other parts of their bodies were artificial bodies did not have any combat ability, so they immediately began to clean up the battlefield. The large group quickly arrived at the periphery, and the stony terrain finally appeared. Lightning flashed and thunder roared in the night sky, accompanied by a heavy downpour that made it difficult to open one's eyes. "That's not right," Junling wondered. "Why are those army-like monsters missing this time?" Ding Meng could not explain this phenomenon. In his telekinesis vision, there was an empty area in all directions. There was not even half a monster. Qin took the initiative to speak. Could it be that they know that this is the annual big hunt, so they are afraid and took the initiative to hide? That's possible. Junling's expression was serious. But this is not because they are afraid. Little Arrow also nodded. "We've been fighting with them for 20 years. When have they ever been afraid of us? When have we ever been afraid of them?" Junling said coldly, "Everyone spread out. Don't stand together. Be alert and be vigilant." Elephant and the others pulled out their weapons and slowly walked forward in a line. After passing through the periphery, the heavy rain in the night sky lessened slightly. In the instant when the lightning flashed, they could clearly see that the current terrain was a strange canyon. The canyon was slanted upwards, as if it led to the mountain range in the distance. The strange thing about the canyon was that all the trees and cliffs had been completely petrified. However, they weren't real rocks, but a mixture of metal, stone, and bone. Ding Ming touched the ground with his hand. "What is this?" Xiao AI said in silence. "I can't analyze its composition. I don't have any comparison samples in my database, but one thing is for sure. This material is extremely hard and has a very strong signal blocking effect. If the starships of the Golden Shield Alliance can fly in, both ion and quantum communication will fail." Ding Ming fiddled with his wristwatch, and, as expected, the signal lights for the communication channels had all been turned off. They had lost contact with the butcher, and when he tried the function again, he realized that there were no communication channels nearby. The elephant held the spear and poked at a rock on the ground. With a chi sound, the rock emitted a spark, but the tip of the spear was slightly distorted. The elephant was dumbfounded. "That can't be right." Ding Ming couldn't help but ask, "Have you been here before?" Junling said, "We came here once 10 years ago, but 10 years ago, this place was on the periphery, and it wasn't like this. The deepest place I've ever seen is like this." Ding Ming understood what she meant. The deepest place she had ever seen did not mean that it was the real deepest place. Junling said, "We can't follow the main group and take the front. We'll move from the side of the ridge." Ding Ming did not ask why. He knew that Junling must have her own reasons. There was a height of more than 100 meters from the bottom of the valley to the ridge. The road was definitely not easy to walk on because the weeds and shrubs on the ground had turned into stony spikes. If they were not careful, they would get hurt. Therefore, Ding Ming and the rest did not move quickly. After advancing for another few dozen kilometers, the terrain gradually became higher. The main group below looked like a group of migrating ants. Suddenly, there was a series of thunderous booms in the sky. The sound of the thunder was terrifying, and it made one's scalp go numb. A few seconds later, dozens of thick purple lightning bolts twisted and fell from the sky, striking the bottom of the valley. The sky and earth were bright as snow. Junior Leopard exclaimed, "Look!" The previous situation finally appeared in the valley. Countless devourer monsters densely packed the two ends of the valley, and then they surged toward the group like a tide, their momentum like a waterfall. This time, there were not only small devourer monsters and small leaders that were a few meters tall, but there were also many large monsters mixed in. One of the monsters was particularly terrifying. Its shape was like a fiery red lizard that had been magnified dozens of times. Its entire body was covered in barbs, and it whizzed down with the flow of the water. Its long tail swept toward the group, and immediately 6 or 7 strong men were swept away and hung on trees. Upon closer inspection, these origin ability users' arms, legs, and bodies were like persimmons that had been flattened by an iron rod. The most frightening thing was that the lizard's mouth spat out a purple flame that was dozens of meters long. The ice walls that the origin ability users had cast melted in the blink of an eye when they encountered the purple flame. For a moment, the main group in the valley was in chaos. Junling coldly watched all of this. "This is not the most dangerous." When she said this, Ding Ming immediately narrowed his telekinesis vision and carefully scanned the valley. He quickly discovered that there was an extremely unique creature hidden in the army of monsters. It was like a bat that was as thin as a cicada's wings, and its entire body was a deathly gray. As the army surged forward like a tide, it did not take the initiative to attack the group. Instead, it spread its thin wings and stuck to the mountain walls, tree bark, and some very hidden corners. In the current terrain, they were like transparent sheets of paper. If not for his telekinesis vision, Ding Ming would have a hard time discovering these bat monsters because these things were really hiding too well. However, Ding Ming had a feeling that these bat monsters were the most dangerous. Sure enough, when some origin ability users were injured in the fierce battle and were left alone, the bat monsters rushed out with a whoosh. In midair, their bodies shrank into the shape of sharp spikes, and in an instant, they drilled into the injured person's heart. They were so fast that they were like a gray shadow passing through the person's body. The person who had been attacked had his entire chest burst open, and he screamed and fell to the ground. It was basically impossible for him to survive after falling to the ground. He would either be eaten by the devouring monsters that followed after him, or be trampled to death by the leader of the group. Of course, the army was not to be trifled with. Dingming finally saw the most horrifying scene. Many origin ability users had either broken a leg or an arm after suffering heavy blows, but these strong men did not retreat. Instead, they roared into the sky, and then new arms and legs grew out from the bloody wounds. Of course, these were not human limbs, but the monster's long arms, spikes, claws, and large palms. Some of them were even bigger and more twisted than the monster's limbs, hideous and terrifying. Green mucus dripped from them, and it was definitely not human blood. After these people mutated, they counterattacked the army of monsters with even more ferocity. The two sides twisted and rolled, biting and slashing at each other. The scene was extremely tragic. Xiao AI sighed. That's what I guessed. Yang Wei implanted the monster's genes into the human body and directly turned people into monsters. This kind of genetic modification would be considered a crime against humanity in the Holy Grail Federation. Dingming watched all this in silence. Xiao AI was not talking nonsense. After these genetic warriors mutated, they had completely entered a berserk state. They could not feel pain, and they did not fear death. Even after their mutated claws were cut off, these people still used their bodies as weapons and rammed into the army of monsters like cannonballs. The monsters that were hit were also smashed to pieces. Only when they were completely turned into meat paste by the army of monsters did they truly die. The battle in the canyon could no longer be called a battle. It was basically a group of monsters destroying each other. The combat strength of the army of 60,000 origin ability users was quite strong, but the monsters at both ends of the canyon kept pouring in. The canyon had become a pool of blood. The green mucus of the monsters and the red blood of the humans mixed together, mixed with countless broken limbs. Under the flash of lightning, the scene appeared nauseating and then mercilessly washed away by the torrent of rain. Forget it. Let's go. Junling probably could not watch any longer. This kind of battle was impossible for the 6 or 7 of them to participate in. The canyon was now a whirlpool. Once they were sucked in, there was no way to get out. The final result would be to die of exhaustion. Dingming nodded. Now that the main force of the monsters was holding back the main force, they could only take advantage of this opportunity to go deeper. After passing through the canyon, the terrain finally flattened. The rainstorm in the sky lessened and the temperature rose. It could be seen that the vast terrain in front of them might have been a grassland decades ago, but now the grassland had become a stone plain. There was no longer an ugly rainforest on the stone plain. Instead, there was a towering tree every few hundred meters. The trees were like lighthouses, pointing the way for Junling. Xiao AI said, Dingming, aren't these the holy trees you mentioned? Dingming sighed. The holy trees have become stone trees, and the holy spirits inside have disappeared. Junling explained, the godstones have probably been used up by the monsters. Dingming said, is this position considered the core position? Junling shook her head and said, I don't know, but according to the description of the ancestors, we are still very far from the core. The current environment is very much in line with the kind of environment that Elder Shui described as devouring the existence of the royal family. You see, we haven't encountered any monsters along the way. If there really are monsters devouring their own kind, then this grassland is a so-called stable environment. This analysis was undoubtedly very reasonable. Dingming frowned and said, we have to speed up. Junling turned her head and said, Junior Leopard. Junior Leopard immediately went forward. Sister June, Junling said coldly, you will scout the way. Move as fast as you can. Chapter 401. Junior Leopard scouting was an eye-opener for Dingming. This stone plain was in the middle of the night. No matter how strong everyone's night vision was, the surrounding scenery was completely the same. It was indeed difficult to distinguish the route. Junior Leopard was running wildly in front. His running posture was very strange. It was not like a person running on two legs. Instead, he was like a wolfhound exerting force on all four limbs. The route was not straight, sometimes twisting and sometimes turning. His speed was as fast as an arrow. At this time, Liu Chang could no longer keep up with this group. He could only return the way he came. Ding Ming naturally would not waste his energy. He drove the prototype to fly close to the ground. Jun Ling and the others were like leopards on the grassland, running as if they were flying. Is the route correct? Ding Ming felt that the range of his telekinesis vision was also blocked by this stone plane. He could not detect too far away. Even if it was 1,000 meters away, he could only sense if there were signs of life. He could not clearly image it. Jun Ling was full of confidence. Don't worry, it's absolutely correct. Junior Leopard relies on his sense of smell. As long as there is any trace of an abnormal smell, he will be able to smell it. Ding Ming also knew that they were a local race. They were very familiar with every blade of grass and every tree on this planet. Using their sense of smell to open a path was something only a local could do. Ding Ming's telekinesis vision was strong enough, but no matter how strong it was, it only stopped at the visual level. It could not be distinguished by smell. Therefore, Junior Leopard's ability was something Ding Ming could not envy. The strength of Jun Ling's group was not reflected in battle. When they truly entered the depths of the endless forest, only then did Ding Ming realize how solid this group's foundation was. Junior Leopard ran continuously in front for 5 hours without any signs of stopping. Moreover, his speed did not decrease. However, Jun Ling and the others were able to keep up. Their breathing was steady and dense. There was not even a trace of panting. If he could successfully return this time, he had to properly learn these skills from this group. Ding Ming secretly made up his mind. After running for an unknown period of time, Junior Leopard finally stopped. It seemed that they had arrived at their destination. Ding Ming and the others quickly followed. Looking around, they saw a circular lake with a diameter of 200 meters in front of them. Rather than calling it a lake, it was better to call it a giant pool. Jun Ling said, "This is not natural." Ding Ming nodded. He realized that Jun Ling was very meticulous. The edge of the pool was very smooth, and there were no traces of excavation. It had been excavated by a large machine, but the problem was that no one had been here for decades. Who had dug it out? Elephant, Jun Ling ordered in a deep voice. The elephant understood. It took 2 steps forward and leaped high into the air. While in midair, it threw a short spear into the water. Pooh! The short spear plunged into the water, and Jun Ling carefully observed the string of bubbles that emerged from the bottom of the water. It's too deep, Jun Ling judged. Ding Ming activated his telekinesis vision, but his vision could only reach a depth of 100 meters, and he still could not see the bottom. Junior Leopard crouched by the pool and stretched his neck to carefully smell the scent of the water. After a long time, he raised his head and said, "Sister June, this water is abnormal. They're much stronger than monsters." The abnormality they were referring to was the poison in the water. Stronger than monsters meant more harmful than the blood of devouring monsters. Ordinary origin ability users could not be contaminated by these poisons. Ding Ming said, "I'll go down and take a look. You all wait here." Jun Ling was not to be outdone. "I'll go with you. The rest of you stay here and wait for orders." Ding Ming hesitated. "This water is very poisonous." Jun Ling pointed at his neck. "It's fine. I have a protective talisman passed down to me by my ancestors." "Oh." Ding Ming noticed that Jun Ling wore a crescent-shaped pendant around his neck. Looking at the material, it should also be made of bone. Its shape was very similar to the hero's knife, but its volume was much larger. Ding Ming and the others all had this kind of ornament on their bodies, especially their wrists, shoulders, and ankles. They all wore all kinds of strange ornaments. Ding Ming had seen them before, but to say that this was some sort of protective talisman, he expressed his doubts. However, he quickly realized that he was wrong. After the prototype sank into the water, Junling did not hesitate to dive in as well. A scene that left Ding Meng and Xiao AI dumbfounded happened. The crescent-shaped pendant on Junling's chest flashed with a purple light. A purple bubble appeared under the water, enveloping his entire body, completely isolating him from the surrounding water. He himself was safe and sound as he dived down with all his might. Ding Meng was dumbfounded. He could not explain this phenomenon. Xiao AI said, "This is a very strange, kind of concentrated energy. It's strange how it could be contained in such a small ornament. Also, this energy fluctuation feels very familiar to me." Ding Meng was surprised. "You have a sample to compare it with? It's a bit like the so-called Godstone on the island, but also a bit like..." Xiao AI hesitated. Ding Meng frowned. "Like what?" Xiao AI said quietly. "I can't analyze it. Its composition is not only complex, but also advanced." Back on the expedition, part of Xinguang Technology's energy fluctuation was similar to this thing. Ding Meng was also silent. He had experienced the various wonders and powers of Xinguang Technology, but Junling and this group of primitive people actually had this thing, and they even believed that it was some kind of protective amulet passed down by their ancestors. For a moment, Ding Meng felt that Madison was full of mysteries. There seemed to be some unknown secret hidden here. Of course, no matter how miraculous Junling's amulet was, it was definitely not as powerful as the first prototype in terms of kinetic energy. The first prototype could still travel at high speed in the water, but Junling could not. She was using the breaststroke method to continuously dive, and as the water pressure increased, she had no choice but to slow down. The purple bubbles, the graceful swimming posture, the brown hair, the bronze skin, the valiant face, and the determined blue eyes of the girl formed a strange classical beauty in this dark underwater world. Even Ding Meng couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Xiao AI said, "No wonder that elephant wants to have a child with this woman. He does have some taste." Junling did not mind Ding Meng staring at her. She swam to Ding Meng's side and gave him a friendly smile to show her gratitude. Ding Meng did not dive down, but waited for her as he flew. At that moment, there seemed to be a flash of light underwater. The two of them exchanged glances and then sped up. The light quickly turned into a flickering glimmer. There was clearly something underwater. Soon, the glimmer turned into light, and the light grew brighter and more obvious. Finally, about 30 meters away from Ding Meng and Xiao AI, a floating white pupil of light could finally be seen. This was not an ordinary pupil of energy. It was like a glowing bubble, constantly spreading rings of light in all directions. These rings of light swept past the prototype, and Ding Meng felt a sense of trepidation. This was because the rings of light fluctuated between strong and weak. When it was weak, it felt like the aura of those monsters outside. But when it grew stronger, Ding Meng felt the immense pressure he had felt when facing the water droplets. The energy contained in these waves was so rich that he dared say he had never seen it before. What in the world was this thing? Inside the pupil of light, there seemed to be countless strands of energy flowing. After a while, a small pterosaur appeared in the pupil of light. This Xiao Long also seemed to be in the form of light energy. Its appearance was very similar to the bat monster they had seen in the canyon. If there was no connection between the two of them would not believe it even if they were killed. Junling quietly pulled out a sharp short spear from her belt. Her goal was simple and crude. "I don't care what you are, I'll kill you first." But Ding Meng quickly waved at her, at the same time gesturing, "Don't act rashly." Junling thought for a moment and still put away the short spear. After all, Ding Meng's idea was safer. Although this thing did not give them a sense of extreme danger, it still made them feel apprehensive. Was it good or evil? Strong or weak? Good or bad? These were all unknown. In the worst-case scenario, if you disturbed it and failed to kill it, it would attack you instead. That would be bad. Ding Meng gestured upwards again. This time, Junling immediately understood and turned to swim upstream. The current mission was not to find the leader, but to quickly go back and meet up with Feng Jianjin and the others. Elder Shui should more or less know the situation here. As soon as the two of them came out of the water, everyone immediately surrounded Junling and pulled her up. Sister June, Qin Xin and the others were not good with words, but this question undoubtedly showed that they were concerned about the situation underwater. Junling immediately described the scene to everyone. Little Arrow immediately said, "It's definitely not the Forbidden Zone. Why is it not the Forbidden Zone?" Ding Ming descended from the sky. Little Arrow frowned, as if trying to recall the past. Although my grandfather has never been to the Forbidden Zone, my great-grandfathers have been close to it. He said that the entrance to the Forbidden Zone is like a glowing mirror. Behind the mirror is another world. This mirror seems to be able to fly. One moment it flies to the hillside, the next moment it flies to the grassland, and sometimes it appears on the sea. There is no pattern. It's definitely not the glowing and motionless ball below. Elephant said, "If that's the case, then the leader is down there." It doesn't look like it. Junling shook her head. If it's really the leader, it shouldn't be in the form of light. It should be in the form of a devouring monster. Then what is it? Everyone felt a headache. After all, Junling's description made them unable to imagine it. Junling said, "Don't ask anymore. Let's go back now and ask Mr. Feng and Elder Shui. They are knowledgeable and will definitely know the origin of the glowing ball." "I'm afraid we can't go back now." Ding Ming suddenly sighed and looked into the depths of the darkness. "We've been exposed." The perception of Junling and the others was also quite sharp. After a series of clattering sounds, everyone held their respective weapons in their hands. Their gazes were also in the direction that Ding Ming was looking at. In the darkness of the stone plain, there were faint shadows swaying. Sure enough, someone had found this place again. Chapter 402. The people who came were all dressed in suits and leather shoes. Yang Wei was the only one in Health Town who dressed like this. However, Yang Wei did not come alone. Behind him were 6 huge, bare-chested men. These 6 people were abnormally large. The normal height of an adult male was between 1.65 to 2.35 meters, but the shortest of these 6 big men was more than 4 meters tall. They were 6 giants. However, looking at the cold and numb faces of the 6 people, Xiao AI warned, "Be careful. These people are half machine, half human genetically modified bodies, just like Ding Ming when he was modified by the K virus. In my database, they are very advanced regenerated soldiers. Don't underestimate them." When Yang Wei appeared, Junling and the others immediately raised their weapons. Yang Wei glanced at Junling, TSK. "What a pity. If you gave me your genes, I promise you would be the best soldier." Junling frowned. "Professor Yang, what are you doing here?" Yang Wei could not help but laugh. "If I didn't come, you guys could only live for 20 days at most. Do you believe me?" Junling did not answer. Although Yang Wei was usually arrogant like this was a very special time. There must be a reason why he dared to speak like this. Yang Wei was too lazy to pay attention to Junling and the others. He walked to the edge of the pool and looked down for a while. He did not know if he saw anything in such a dark environment. Anyway, after looking for a while, he looked up and said to himself, "It shouldn't be wrong. It must be this place." Junling was not stupid. He immediately figured out many key issues. "So you already knew that there are groups of monsters in the Endless Forest, but there are no monsters in the core area." Yang Wei laughed again. When I first came here, you were just a little girl who could only fish by the sea. Do you think you know more than me?" Junling was not angry. He continued to ask, "With your strength, you definitely can't enter. You need someone to open the way for you." Yang Wei sighed. "Your parents were powerful enough. They could enter Death Canyon and retreat unscathed every time. It's a pity that they died too early." Junling was moved. "You see my parents?" Yang Wei nodded. "I've seen all of your parents, and I can say that they are much more powerful than you kids. I was hoping that they would be able to find this place, but unfortunately, the elephant and Little Arrow could not help but ask at the same time, 'What's a pity?'" Yang Wei sighed. Just like you, they are too conceited. They think that they can deal with monsters with a group of uncivilized people. They have been fighting their whole lives, but they don't know what kind of opponent they are fighting, so he didn't finish his sentence, but everyone could guess that the parents of Junling and the others must have died in the hands of the monsters. Ding Ming suddenly said, if you want to enter the core area from the periphery, you have to pass through the rainforest, the periphery, and the canyon. However, there are groups of monsters along the way, especially in the Death Canyon. There are too many and too powerful monsters. Without a strong armed force, you can't pass through. Yang Wei looked at Ding Ming with some surprise. I was hoping that this group of barbarians could open the way for me. Unfortunately, they died too early and left behind this group of children. I can't expect a group of children to find this place, right? Ding Ming said, so you gave up on this idea? Yang Wei cannot help but say, I didn't expect you to be so smart. Ding Ming pondered and said, you and Professor Zeng should want to enter this place. Unfortunately, the environment here is dangerous, so you used your specialties to think of a way. Yang Wei smiled. You're quite interesting. Tell me, what are we thinking of? Ding Ming smiled and said, you're a biological expert. Your method is to continuously accept the disabled people sold by the pirates and modify their genes while perfecting your immature genetic modification technology. Yang Wei was still smiling. Continue. Ding Ming said, Professor Zeng is an expert in machinery. His method is to install artificial limbs on these disabled people. On the one hand, he encourages these people to enter the forest of infinity to hunt. On the other hand, the skeletons these people obtain from hunting can be used to constantly perfect his bone armor technology. Yang Wei clicked his tongue. I admire this Professor Zeng. He can modify animal bones to be invulnerable. With these bone armors on my genetic warriors, what can they do? Ding Ming said, that's right. The lighthouse of Health Town is above, and the town is below. The two of you don't like each other, but you've coexisted peacefully for many years without any conflict. Unknowingly, you've reached a tacit understanding. The more people you sell, the more people will die in the forest of infinity, and the more skeletons you hunt. Then, your genetic modification and bone armor technology will be completely mature one day. Yang Wei's smile became a little unnatural. And then, Ding Ming sneered. You organized the annual big hunt and even contacted the Golden Shield Alliance. You said you wanted to send people back, but in fact, you were testing year after year to see if you could break through the defense of the monster army and finally rush into the core area. You didn't treat these disabled people as humans at all. You deliberately sent them to their deaths to complete your experiment. Yang Wei's smile finally disappeared. He stared at Ding Ming and said, Kid, who do you think you are? An analyst or a prophet? Do you really think your guess is accurate? Junling couldn't help but say angrily, is he wrong? Although she also advocated force and was used to living in the jungle, her people also had their own principles. No matter what, a disabled person was still a human, or at least a human. You treated humans as test subjects. This was something she could not tolerate. Moreover, Yang Wei had always wanted to capture Junling and the others to the lighthouse for experiments. If it weren't for the fact that this group of people was strong in martial arts, they might have been the few giants behind Yang Wei. Yang Wei sighed. Forget it. I won't argue with you little kids. You don't know anything at all. He waved his hand, and the 6 strong men immediately came to the side of the pool. Little Arrow and the others immediately raised their weapons. What do you want? Seeing the dagger in Little Arrow's hand, Yang Wei couldn't help but sigh. This dagger of yours has been passed down from generation to generation, right? Little Arrow was stunned and said, Yes. Yang Wei said, Your grandfather passed it to your father, and your father later left it to you, right? Little Arrow hesitated. How do you know? Yang Wei's sigh became heavier. When I came here, you weren't even born yet. More than 30 years ago, my spaceship crashed on Madison. Your grandfather used this dagger to save me from the monsters. This time, not only was Little Arrow stunned, even Ding Ming and Junling were stunned. There was actually such a past. Yang Wei continued. Health Town was just a tribe at that time. There were more than 100 of your people at that time. Later, they died in battle one after another. I had a good relationship with your grandfather. When he was alive, he asked me to stay and help everyone resist the devouring monster. If it weren't for your grandfather, I would have left long ago. Who the hell would stay in this godforsaken place? This time, everyone was speechless. Yang Wei said, "There's so many monsters on Madison, and the monster's territory is expanding year after year. Many years ago, I thought that there must be a root cause. We can only remove the root cause and solve the problem from the root cause. Only then can we make these damn things disappear forever." Ding Ming couldn't help but ask, "What is the root cause?" Yang Wei pointed at the pool and said, "Did you go down just now and see a glowing ball of light?" Jun Ling hesitated and replied, "Yes." Yang Wei said, "Let me tell you, that is the root cause. That ball of light is the mother body of these monsters. The mother body is constantly devouring the resources on this planet, devouring your so-called God stone, and then constantly hatching, creating endless monsters. Sooner or later, this planet will become hell." This statement was very different from the devouring royal family mentioned in Shuiyu Mountain. However, looking at Yang Wei's appearance, it didn't seem like he was lying. Chapter 403. It was not unusual for humans and monsters to become one. Yang Wei had modified many of the genetic warriors in the army. It could be said that these warriors were neither human nor monster. They were completely unknown creatures. Yang Wei was too lazy to deny it. He asked, "What about you? Are you just here to study bone armor technology?" "Of course not." Zheng Kang's attitude was frightening. "I'm here to stop you." "Stop us." Yang Wei frowned. He did not understand this. "It seems that you don't know anything either." Zheng Kang could not help but sigh. "It's good that you don't know. Those who are kept in the dark are blessed. Let's go back." "Go back." Yang Wei was even more confused. "Go back where?" "Go back to where we came from, of course." Zheng Kang replied faintly. "The fleet of the Golden Shield Alliance has arrived. You can take their starship back to the God War Starfield. With your genetic modification technology, I'm sure many sects and alliances will fight for you. You've been here for decades. It's time to go back and enjoy your life." Yang Wei suddenly bent over and laughed. He laughed so hard that tears almost came out his eyes. "Professor Zheng, now I know that the one who's crazy is not me, but you." Zheng Kang frowned. "I gave you a way out, and you didn't want to take it? Do you really want to die?" Yang Wei suddenly raised his head and said coldly, "I'd like to see who's going to die." At this time, even Jun Ling and the rest could sense that there were shadows flashing in the depths of the darkness. This time, it wasn't just one person or a few people, but a group of people rushing out. These people were wearing the same armor and held various energy weapons. The leaders were Ming Bang and Sung Jia. These soldiers surrounded Ding Meng and the others as soon as they came over. They pointed their guns at Zheng Kang. Yang Wei smiled proudly. "Professor Zheng, can't you just study your bow and armor technology? Why do you have to go against us?" "You?" Zheng Kang was puzzled. Yang Wei smiled. "What do you think?" Zheng Kang suddenly smiled too. His smile was indescribably strange. "You're wrong about one thing. You are you, not you." As soon as he finished speaking, all the soldiers slowly turned their guns and pointed them at Yang Wei. Yang Wei's face suddenly changed. He didn't expect this situation at all. "You? So you're in cahoots?" "You are wrong again." Zheng Kang looked at him and said word by word, "I was originally a member of the Golden Shield Alliance. Many years ago, I was entrusted by the Alliance to come to Madison to manage this place. You're just an outsider. I've already told you that you like to think too highly of yourself, but..." He paused, and his tone became slightly gentler. "We still have to thank you. If it weren't for your years of research and modification of these genetic warriors, we really wouldn't be able to come here today. That's why the Alliance has been providing resources and people for your lighthouse. You're really not bad. You've been obediently cooperating with me all these years." "You bastard!" Yang Wei was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He had worked so hard for so many years, but he didn't expect that it was all for someone else. Ming Bang walked over with a smile. Professor, you've worked hard all these years. Zheng Kong was expressionless. It's not hard. It's time for the higher-ups to fulfill their promise to me, right? Ming Bang smiled. Of course. When we return successfully this time, the higher-ups will naturally satisfy all your requests. Ding Ming didn't say anything. At this moment, he could see that Yang Wei and Zheng Kang's goal was the so-called mother. However, Yang Wei seemed to want to destroy the mother, while Zheng Kong wanted to protect it. Sure enough, Ming Bang waved his hand and said, Everyone, take action. While the mother is still in the incubation stage, take it out. You guys are crazy. Yang Wei was exasperated. Do you know what kind of powerful creature this is? You want to take it out just because you want to? Don't tell me you want to study it? Ming Bang smiled and said, Professor Yang, don't you want to study it too? We'll take it to the starship and transport it back to the Alliance. At that time, you can study it however you want. We'll always be in a cooperative relationship, don't you think so? Yang Wei could still hear the threat in the last sentence, but he was anxious. No, the mother can't be taken away casually. It must die here. I've already analyzed it. Its growth speed is too scary. You guys don't understand at all. Xingjia also stepped forward and smiled. Professor Yang, please cooperate. We'll always be friends. Yang Wei suddenly thought of something. His complexion became indescribably terrifying. He kept retreating as he pointed at Ming Bang and said, I know, I finally know. You. So all of this was planned by you all. Ming Bang nodded. Junling couldn't help but ask, what plan? Yang Wei turned his head and said, You should know that this is a terrifying ancient insect egg, right? This wasn't for Junling, but for Zheng Kong. Zheng Kong was still calm. What are you trying to say? Yang Wei hissed, I don't know where you got this thing, but under normal circumstances, as long as this thing is found, the entire God's War's starfield will destroy it. Not only did you not destroy it, but you also put it on a peripheral planet. You let it hatch, plunder, devour, mutate, evolve, reproduce, and then evolve again. Ming Bang's smile finally disappeared. He frowned and said, Professor Yang, what are you talking about? Yang Wei angrily pointed at Ming Bang and Zheng Jia. You clearly know how terrifying this monster is, but you still let it grow. It turns out that you've already planned this. When it hatches for the 5th time, you'll take it away and put it on another planet. I get it. You want to put on the God's War starfield. You want to deal with the 6 major sects. He angrily pointed at Zheng Kong. You were sent to manage this place because the 4th incubation 20 years ago went out of control. You have to find this place when it hatches for the 5th time. If this thing is really put on the God's War starfield, the entire God's War starfield will be destroyed. Zheng Kong was expressionless, but he didn't answer. Ming Bang coldly said, Professor Yang, you'd better watch your mouth if you don't have concrete evidence. However, at this moment, an ice-cold chill spread out from Junling. She also walked forward expressionlessly and said, Professor Yang, you're saying that many years ago, someone deliberately threw an insect egg onto planet Madison and allowed it to devour our Godstone. Then it grew bit by bit, and in the end it killed so many people and turned planet Madison into this? Yang Wei immediately shouted, Yes, the real murderer of her ancestors is the Golden Shield Alliance. Junling slowly turned around and faced Ming Bang and Zheng Jia. Is that so? Ming Bang knew that he couldn't hide this anymore. Since Yang Wei saw through it, he might as well shed all pretense of cordiality. So what? Primitive tribes, like you're trash to begin with. You can't even deal with monsters. What answered him wasn't a human voice, but a few cold flashes of light. In the darkness, a few soldiers couldn't even let out a scream before they were cut into pieces by Elephant, Little Arrow, and the others. Ruthless people wouldn't talk nonsense when they attacked. At the same time, Junling darted out like a leopard. She didn't even pull out her weapon. Instead, she directly hit Ming Bang's face with her elbow. Her momentum was astonishing, and she was as fast as lightning. With a pa, Ming Bang used his palm to catch the attack, but he was shaken and slid back a few steps. When he raised his head, he was shocked. Spiritual weapon user? You guys actually broke through. His expression changed again, and he coldly spat out a word. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, cold flashes of light flashed wildly in the darkness. A large number of soldiers fell to the ground with a plop plop. They were either pierced through by a spear or cut into two by a knife. The remaining people immediately opened fire with shio 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 sounds. However, energy weapons were useless against Junling and the others. It wasn't that they couldn't cause any damage, but that elephant, little arrow, and little leopard were too agile. They jumped up and down very nimbly, especially little arrow. When all kinds of energy bullets came at him, he rolled 7 to 8 meters away. Immediately, 3 or 4 soldiers fell to the ground with a scream. Little arrow didn't aim anywhere else. His battle knife slashed at the arm holding the gun, and the arm immediately separated from the shoulder. Little arrow didn't get up. Junling's group of 6 surrounded Ming Bang's group and bombarded them. Unfortunately, Ming Bang and Tsungjia were war sovereigns after all. Their foundation was there for all to see. They really weren't people Junling's group could kill. If one were to evaluate them by rank, Junling's group were all high-level warriors. They had deep foundations, excellent martial skills, and good teamwork. It was easy for them to become war sovereigns, but that required time to repeatedly cultivate their abilities. Thus, Junling was getting more and more anxious. No matter how the 6 of them attacked, Ming Bang and Tsungjia were able to calmly parry. Moreover, Ming Bang and Tsungjia didn't seem to have any intention of counterattacking. If they really did, they probably wouldn't be able to withstand it. The current situation was that they kept attacking, not giving the other side a chance to counterattack. Crash! With a loud explosion, the prototype flew out of the pool, spewing out crystal flames. Ding Ming shouted, "Let's go. Hurry up and leave this place. It's dangerous." Normally, this word didn't exist in Junling's dictionary. Go sometimes meant escape to her, but she was still attentive. She discovered that Ding Ming's voice actually carried a slight tremor. This was definitely a new situation underwater. After 30 seconds, the 2 groups of people took the initiative to stop and retreat. This was because the ground seemed to be trembling slightly. Junior Leopard crawled on the ground and pressed his ear to the ground to listen carefully. After a moment, he raised his head. Devouring monster. Ming Bang's expression also changed. What's going on? This is the core area. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The ground was no longer trembling, but violently shaking. Everyone's footsteps were unsteady. Moreover, everyone's gaze turned to the pool. No one was stupid. They all sensed that there was a large number of monsters surging in the pool and were about to rush out of the water. Beast Tide? Elephant's reaction wasn't slow. Junling turned her head and discovered that the prototype was flying deeper. At this moment, she chose to believe in Ding Ming. Go! Follow the direction he's flying in. Just as Junling's group of 6 ran away, Ming Bang and Yang Wei's expressions changed at the same time. How could this be? Countless devouring monsters surged out of the pool. These monsters didn't crawl out or drill out of the water, but spit them out. There seemed to be an invisible force at the bottom of the pool that pushed these monsters out of the water. They shot up into the sky like a fountain. The splashes of water were devouring monsters, small leaders, fire lizards, bat monsters, and other monsters. They blotted out the sky and covered the earth. There were even more monsters than in Death Canyon. It gave people the feeling that this was a world where demons ran amok. It was too late to escape now. Ming Bang didn't expect this to happen at all. relying on devouring the emotions of creatures to hatch. I really can't imagine what kind of existence it will be after its fourth evolution. Yang Wei admitted defeat for the first time. Zheng Kong, you're a mechanic, but your knowledge of biology makes me, a so-called biological expert, feel ashamed. Ding Meng's voice turned cold. Professor, when did you discover this secret? Zheng Kong said, I only discovered it 5 years after I came here. But fortunately, devouring emotions is an extremely slow process. I speculate that it will take decades for it to hatch. Ding Meng stared at him. The question is, since you've discovered the mother's secret, why are you still absorbing outsiders, making bone armor, and organizing activities like the Big Hunt to encourage everyone to fight? Isn't this accelerating the formation of the mother? I knew you would ask this question. Zheng Kong sighed. He turned his head and looked at the starship in the distance. If you looked closely at his eyes, you would find that there was a trace of sadness in his eyes. When I was sent to Madison, I thought that I would only need to stay for a few years before I could be repatriated and reunite with my family. But in the 3rd year, my wife and daughters died. All of them died. Ding Meng was stunned. What happened? Zheng Kong gritted his teeth and said, they were killed by someone. After they died, they were burned clean. Not even their ashes were left behind. My eldest daughter was only 9 years old at the time, and my youngest daughter was only 3 years old. If they could live to this day, they would be like you, healthy and lively young people. Perhaps they could even become psionicists, but his tone was full of pain, and he couldn't continue speaking. Ding Meng also gritted his teeth. Who is so vicious that they even want to kill children? Yang Wei sighed. I'm afraid it's the Golden Shield Alliance. Maybe it's that Gao Sunday, Zheng Kong said. Gao Sun's son is also a mechanical authority. The higher-ups felt that they no longer needed me, so his son replaced me. Ding Meng said, but there's no need to be so ruthless, right? They could have just let you go. Is there a need to kill your family? Zheng Kong shook his head. You've lived here since you were young and have never come into contact with the outside world. You don't understand the real human world. The most complicated and terrifying creatures in the universe are humans. They are far more terrifying than the mother on this planet. There must be a deeper reason for this, but Zheng Kong was unwilling to say it. Ding Meng said, then how did you find out about this? Zheng Kong sighed. Every year, Old Du came personally to the Big Hunt. Old Du and I were friends when he was alive. He secretly revealed to me that Gao Sun's family was the murderer of my wife and daughter. But this year, it was a different person. If I'm not wrong, Old Du is also dead, Ding Meng sighed. I understand.